Good evening. This is meeting of the Dog Park Committee, and obviously to anybody watching, we have visitors tonight, and I will allow Mrs. Jacobson to do the introductions. I should actually begin. We know that TV is recording this meeting, but is there anyone else who is recording? Since there's no one else here, I'm sure there isn't. So, Mrs. Jacobson, would you do the honors for us?
I'd be happy to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee, for entertaining us and letting us come here this evening. So I just want to introduce, first of all, the Chairman of the Board of Selectmen, Ken Holstrom, is here. And on the town administration team, Ed Kazanovich is our assistant town manager and our CFO, and does a phenomenal job. Shannon Regan, who is a Auburn High grad, an Auburn resident, and an assistant in my office. Amy Contois, who you all know, but people watching may not know, is our animal control officer, and Bill Coyle, who is the DPW director. We're kind of internally the unofficial internal dog park committee. We're the ones, the five of us that have been getting together on a regular basis for well over a year now, talking about various aspects of the dog park, how are we going to get through it, how are we going to facilitate it, what are the issues, and how do we figure it all out? So we are the ones to be here. I asked the chairman if we could come this evening because most of us did watch the dog park committee meeting. You may not believe, but we do watch it. You know, we try to watch, catch up at nights and weekends and keep up with what the committees are doing. We don't want to be in your way, but we want to be responsive when you need us to be. And my concern, I speak just for me, but I think all of them would say, we all had a concern that the timeline that was presented caused a lot of discussion. It was well over an hour, and quite frankly, there were a lot of parts of the timeline that were discussed that weren't accurate, so I want to come in and run you through it, and I think that will eliminate 80% of the discussion you had last week, or the concerns about the discussion. Some of the other comments that were made last week also concerned us, which is why we're here. We want to go back to where we have and hopefully we still do, a respectful relationship. We're cooperating, we're working with you. We've really been trying to help the committee along. We want to assure you, we've done it privately, we'll do it publicly, that we are here to help you. We want to help you facilitate what it is you need to do, but we don't want to tell you what it is to do. So we're trying to walk a fine line between you making your decisions and being responsive to your questions. So to speak of that, and there were a couple of issues with regard to the Fur Friends too, which I noticed there was a lot of discussion about getting us together. We're fine with the Fur Friends. I don't think there are any concerns yet. We're just not there on some of the things yet, which we will be once we get through the next couple of steps.
No, and I think that's
concerns.
absolutely right, and I have received a letter from the president of the Fur Friends saying the same, essentially the same
Okay,
thing.
so I thought what we could do, and all of us will jump in. First of all, some of the statements that were made are concerns that this timeline is unrealistic, it's unacceptable, we can't allow it. I just want to be perfectly honest with you. The timeline is aggressive, but it takes years to get a development project. I've been doing this for 30 years. I've been in economic development 30 years. And I started when I was 10, but it's been a long time that I've been in this field. I've worked on projects that range from $500 projects to $300 million projects, and they range from probably a low of 18 months to a high of 10 years. Those are the projects that I've been involved in. So in a case like this, when you look at a timeline, 2 years to get a project completed when you don't even have a site chosen yet is what I would call an aggressive timeline. That being said, some of the comments that were made about the timeline in the start, I think maybe the timeline was being read wrong. So if we can go through the timeline, you'll see that some of the things that I heard aren't actually true in here. And some of it, I was asked by a member of your committee, a couple members, if we could provide a timeline to you showing all the tasks so you could see the context of what your role was. Please do not misinterpret that you are responsible for all of this, because you're not. You're responsible for what your mission was set forth in the first meeting and by the Board of Selectmen, which we were clear in the first meeting. I went back and I looked. We gave a lot of information to you on what the board wanted, what the expectations were, what some of the limitations were, and some of these are our tasks involved with this. But seeing as some of the committee members felt it would be helpful to know what it is, we knew when we submitted it that there were going to be some questions, which is why when I submitted it, I said I really wanted to come and take you through it. There were a lot of issues that have come up that weren't the case when we first were appointed. Number one, the foundation has changed their regulations with regard to grants. They were not competitive in January. After a meeting they had in February, they became competitive. That changed. The other thing that I wouldn't say changed, but added to what some of your frustration is, and ours too, but I think we can get through this as well, is if indeed the best site is the skateboard park, current skateboard site, it's that there is a cost with moving that. And the Board of Selectmen has made it clear that they don't want to see taxpayer dollars spent on the dog park. But we've been talking internally about how to potentially spend much needed funds on the relocation of a skateboard park. If it is tied in with the dog park, and it is for the good of the entire park, as well as for the skateboard park, which needs refurbishment at some point. So we've got some ideas on that too. So I think if we can just bring it back for a minute to where the timeline is, alleviate some of your concerns, and then Amy can also, she's done a lot of research on other dog parks across the state, and she can run you through it, but I will tell you that the minimum amount of time that it takes to get a dog park everywhere else in Massachusetts is 2 years. So if we're saying we're going to be done in 2 years, then we're on the high end of doing that. That can move to a year and a half. I don't want to, I'm very conservative. Eddie and I always conservative. We have to be conservative, because if we're aggressive and we come up with something that can't be met, then we're criticized because we were too lofty and it couldn't be met, and it's frustrating for people. It's better to say, here's what I would call a worst case scenario, and let's work toward making a better case scenario. So, Mr. Chairman, if I can just quickly run you through it in just a couple things. So just for, because I heard a couple comments about, you know, is this project being treated differently than any other project? Absolutely, 100% it is not. It has the exact same treatment as every other project. We develop timelines whenever we're working on projects. We have to keep ourselves on track. It's part of project management in the municipal world. I would tell you the Pappas Playground took 3 years. And that was a similar project. It's much smaller. It took 3 years from the time they began discussion. They actually began discussion in 2012. It was opened in 2015. There was a Friends of group that was raising money. It was a challenge to raise the money. It's not easy. I give a lot of credit for the groups that commit to doing it. You know, we're grateful that you do. We were also grateful that we applied for funds from the legislature, and we got an $80,000 grant from the state to supplement it. So all that being said, from the time we started talking about it to the time it was done was 3 years. The Pappas Recreation Complex itself was 5, and that's larger. But the Pappas Playground is smaller than what we're trying to do here. So to put it in the context, when we say this is a 2-year project, the playground was a 3-year project, and it was probably a quarter of the physical size and had less of the site work to do. But similar processes with grants, fundraising, and permitting.
Through the chair, can I make a comment? So I absolutely appreciate you all coming in and, you know, trying to help educate and share some information with respect to, you know, your perspective and all that. I think that's great. I think part of the challenge, you know, a lot of, just last week, you know, the little motion behind, you know, a lot of us have been coming in here weekly for a number of weeks. And then when we kind of got something that didn't have any really context around it, we tried to decipher it. We was trying to put pieces of paper together to kind of look at an end-to-end timeline. So, you know, we were kind of probably not in the best place to make full judgment of what's going on. That said, I guess I would like, as someone who's new to committees and new to municipal government, I'm not a stranger in the corporate world. I do see a lot of parallels between how the corporate world works as well as how town government works. There is roles, there are people, there's process, there's technology, and there's systems. The differences, you know, really are on the subject matters of what we discuss, but all that together, more or less, is what it is. I think when a lot of us came together and we got started, it felt like we were all under the pressure that things were going to happen a little bit quicker, a little bit faster, and maybe, you know, part of that is just inexperience on some of us on the board that have not been part of other committee type stuff. So I guess what I would offer up as a suggestion, you know, going forward, right? It would be good to kind of, you know, ideas I have around this is maybe like, you know, putting together a short 15 minute video on what it means to be on a committee and what you can expect, and, you know, what's some of the process related stuff, so that, you know, you get an understanding of kind of, you know, what you come into it. You know, I don't know if there's any correlation to this, but I've noticed there's like 20 open slots in terms of committee spots on the website as of today. That to me feels like a lot, and I wonder what's the backstory behind that. And I think, if people come into committees and things are, like the goal, I've always felt like the goal that was given was very open-ended. Go out and provide a recommended site location and a cost analysis. Well, I guarantee everyone, if we took one person in the room, one at a time, and said, define a cost analysis, what does that mean? What would you expect? You would get 20 different answers. So, I guess when we set goals, I think it would be helpful from the people who sets those goals to provide a little bit around the criteria for success. How are the selectmen going to view what is being done and determining what is successful? If money is, like, for instance, if this costs taxpayer money, is that a no-no? And is that basically a success criteria? It cannot cost additional money for us to be able to move forward, because then that would have potentially saved us some time and things like that sort. So I guess what I would provide is a couple of recommendations. When you empower committees, maybe document a little bit more about what we're looking to do, a little bit more color commentary, goals. Open-ended goals to me just add challenges. I think educating a little bit more, and I know we talked about it a little bit, but maybe Ron and some other folks that have served, but I had no indication, that this was going to go on for, potentially 2 years, 3 years, because when I start computing the steps of what it looks like it should take, it's a lot less than that. So I'll leave it at that. I just think, I'm happy to have a discussion offline to give some more thoughts on it, but I think if people have more positive experiences with committees, then the likelihood that they'll be wanting to return and serve the town and future volunteer experiences begins to increase.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Go ahead.
So,
I know
Mr.
you're-
Chairman, thank you. And I appreciate your comments, Jim. Certainly happy to have a conversation at another time about something like that. The reason we're here is to go over the timeline, because that did cause some concern. And actually, the timeline, one of the statements that was made that I heard that was very inaccurate, which seemed to trigger the rest of the conversation, was that the dog park wasn't even going to be the design wasn't going to be submitted until June of 18. And that is absolutely wrong. In the timeline, it's being submitted September of this year. 3 months. So I want to make that clear. When that's clear, I think everything else falls into place. So it's very hard to come up with a timeline with this amount of tasks. So I also want to be clear, it's very hard to read a timeline. That's why I wanted to explain it to you. It's hard to see it on a screen. It's even harder to see it on a piece of paper. It's hard to read where the tasks are. So the reason that we are here is to show you what the timeline is, to explain to you what the committee is, our expectations, and what people do not expect you to do, but you did want to see what those tasks were. So I just want to show you some of the concerns that we have as far as what makes this successful. And I know in the first meeting we did hand you a lot of information about what the grant entailed, what was needed, what we were expecting of the committee, but I think tonight would be a good opportunity if we can just run through really quickly. Task, and I'll try to be brief.
Through the chair,
No, we've got to,
I would just ask if there's copies available of what she's referring to.
I
That
think we
kind of
have
hard to.
those, don't we?
We have them
I
on
know
5
brought it
pages,
last
Yeah.
week.
Yeah, we have it. Do you want this?
so
Okay.
a little bit harder to read on 5 pages.
And it is that,
No, it's just really long. This is basically what we have in the 5 pages.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
all right, then I can just, as I said, I can walk you through it. It is hard, it's large, I apologize.
Right.
But task 1 is your committee. That is your piece right here in the first column, because I thought that's where we should start. So we foresee that your meetings would be done unless you want to continue to meet and provide input. We're thrilled with that, but your initial task was to evaluate sites, make a recommendation to the board, give a cost analysis, and do neighborhood outreach. We feel that all of that, at the very latest, would be done by September, hopefully before then. The second one is evaluating, DPC, I just abbreviated, evaluating the sites. We put it through May because we understand that you have a meeting scheduled potentially for April 27th. But I also heard from some of the members of the committee that you weren't sure if that was too aggressive, so I didn't want to tell you what to do, so I added another month to it, so you didn't feel you had to have that meeting on the 27th.
Excuse me, through the chair, just one question, please. Could you please clarify where in the initial charge it indicates we are to do the outreach meeting? I just want to clarify that
yeah.
we're not doing anything beyond what the Board of Selectmen has directed us to
I
do.
believe it came in the very first meeting on January 4th,
Yeah.
was it, or 5th? And I believe that was the meeting that the Vice Chairman of the Board of Selectmen,
Yes.
Doreen Goodrich, spoke and mentioned that it was very important to the Board of Selectmen that you do outreach
Yes.
and that you were prepared to answer questions from some of the neighbors and/or abutters that were raised on the Upland Street
Yeah.
meeting.
I read it, I was there when she verbally stated
Mhm.
it, and it was transcribed in your minutes,
Mhm.
but it was not stated in writing as part of the initial charge. So that's where I believe some of the disconnect lies.
Okay. So I apologize, but I thought we had made it clear the first night that outreach was part of it, and then it was in the meetings.
And then, excuse me, didn't you come back to our meeting and say that we were not going to be having a meeting where we would be answering questions?
I think
We
that
were told that we
when
were not
we've
going to be
talked
asked,
about
we were
it,
not going to be asked, we were not going to be allowed to answer
an
questions.
outreach meeting, that we were to use that more to take in information and concerns of
And
the
not to
abutters and not try to answer
Right.
them at the
Yeah,
at
and
the
that's,
time.
there are many different ways you can do it. That
Yeah.
is one way, is to present the information and then just listen.
Yeah.
And not feel that you need to be
Yeah.
responsive to every question.
Where was that driven from, though? You said that was driven from them, from
I
your
think it was-
office, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it may have
Through
been,
the chair, I believe during one of the subcommittee meetings,
Yeah.
it was mentioned, rather than having a public hearing where you would be required to try to answer and address questions, that you may want to consider having a listening session,
Yes.
so that you listen to what
So
the
that was just a
feedback is.
suggestion, not what it was
No,
portrayed
well,
as in our
so-
meeting was
yeah.
not a suggestion.
Well, we wouldn't necessarily tell you how you have to conduct your hearings, but it would be, based on some of the feedback we were getting, I think there was concern, are we going to be expected to answer all these questions? And no, you wouldn't be, unless you wanted to go there and try to. But my suggestion, I think, would have been to have a listening session, because it would have made it less stressful and maybe more productive for your committee.
Sure.
If I,
Thank
through the
you.
chair, if I could just add to that too. Not to disagree, but I also believe that as part of the process of recommending a site, I really do, especially with the experience last year of the Upland Street project and the opposition from the residents, I actually think that the outreach part is a huge part of the site selection. The reason why we chose a recreational area is because there aren't as many immediate abutters. And so, if anything, to hopefully avoid, we don't want people to be unhappy with this project. We want this to be a benefit for everybody. So my view is that that would definitely be a part of it, so that we could not address, but at least hear those concerns. So when we do present to the Board of Selectmen, we can kind of have answers for any of those concerns. That's pretty much my thought on that. So in my opinion, the charge of choosing the site kind of automatically includes what does the public think about the site? Is that a benefit? Does it take away? Is it a disadvantage to the site, etc. So I don't know if that's somewhat like an open thing, or
I think that's exactly
you know.
what the Mrs. Goodrich stated the first night of the meeting, and that will repeat it again, thanks Bill, in the subcommittee meeting as well as, and I think the second meeting we came and talked about outreach as well.
And again, through the chair, it's something that you as a committee can decide how you want to, if you do have that meeting, because if there are questions that you don't feel comfortable with, you can say we can get back to you.
Right.
Because sometimes it is a little awkward having a listening session too. Like I said, I've been to hearings where people who go to them get a little frustrated because they're just giving you their comments and there's no dialogue. So I will caution you, they can be awkward too. So it's however the committee feels comfortable running it, if you feel comfortable saying, we'll answer questions that we're comfortable answering, beyond that, we'll either get back to you or refer you to, either someone from the town staff, or you can get back to them yourselves.
Through the chair, thank you, Mr. Coyle. I think that really states what we were discussing at the subcommittee meeting and really kind of further clarifies some of the concerns that some members of this committee had with regards to that piece, how it evolved what the expectation is and what the deliverable would be that the Board of Selectmen would ultimately want.
I know the Board of Selectmen had a long discussion about it at one or two of their meetings as well, about the outreach. I think, Nicole, you were there for one of the meetings. But when they were talking about establishing the committee, there was a long discussion about the need to outreach into the community so people understood and educate them. What is a dog park? What is it not? What are, we heard criticisms, dogs bark all the time. It brings people's property values down. Those are the specific things that Mrs. Goodrich that evening said to you. Be prepared to answer that, because those were the things that we were getting hit with that evening. And they're all good questions. So so when you see here the evaluate sites, develop basic cost estimates, and conduct neighborhood outreach, this is up to you, but this is based on what I've seen from some of the discussions on your meetings that I've watched, where you wanted to be. I understand you wanted to do it in April. You originally wanted to come to the board in April, but you hadn't had any public meeting yet. So the board, I know, wanted to see the outreach, so you weren't ready, so you put it off. My understanding is there was a date, April 27th, that might be available. If that doesn't work and you feel you're not ready, I think we've said a couple times, I want to definitely repeat it again, don't rush it for that reason, because it's better to be prepared, even though, yes, we're trying to move it along, and get support for it. Once you do finish this, then you can, if you're comfortable, you come before the Board of Selectmen and you make a recommendation on your site, and you can tell them, you did the outreach, this is what you did. As a matter of fact, one of the committee members did a good thing and watched the Board of Selectmen meetings and said, the Board of Selectmen talked a lot about engaging the Parks and Recreation Committee and the Open Space Committee. Should we be doing that? And I said, that's really not a bad idea at all to do that, because they're involved in different aspects of it. They had actually talked about a dog park on the Open Space Committee 2 years ago. And we had gone before them 2 years ago, as did, I believe, did you go before them? Amy, I know you did. Open Space Committee, to tell them that we were thinking of a dog park. So as a courtesy, to let them know that you're moving forward on it, and B, the more people you can outreach to, their residents, you're educating them on what it is you're trying to do. They are an advisory group that's responsible for preparation and implementation of the Open Space and Recreation Plan, of which a dog park is inclusive. It's a recreational facility. So once you go to the Board of Selectmen, so I was thinking that maybe you'd go to the Board of Selectmen in May. That's only a month from now. I don't know if you're even going to be ready for that, which is why I'm saying this is aggressive. So it's on there for May. I put the Board of Selectmen to hold a meeting, because my understanding is once the board hears from you, they then want to advertise that they're holding a meeting to let people know that they want to discuss it and get their input, because they're the elected body. They want to hear from their constituents. So I put June and July, because I honestly didn't know when they'd be ready to do that, how much notification is needed, and when in May you'd be coming. So this is, again, it's going to slide. I put here the BOS then supports the site, but they have to know that the Friends are ready to give a 10%, which the Friends verbally said at a meeting to the Board of Selectmen that they are committed to the 10%. So we're good on that. What you see here that seemed to cause some alarm was the Friends formed the not-for-profit. My understanding is, from talking to people at the state, it takes 6 months to get a not-for-profit formed. And there has been no move yet, and I understand why, but the fact is it hasn't been started yet. The problem we're going to run into on this timeline is, and I'll show you in a minute, the grant application for design requires, A, that the town provide a written statement that the 10% of the funds are there. Not that they are available yet, but we're committed to getting them. I don't have any authority to commit to 10% of the funds without a vote of a town meeting, or without it in the budget. It is not in the budget because we don't have a site. We can't have a budget until we have a site. We can't develop the budget until we have the site. So it's all, everything's kind of tied into each other. So I put here the Friends forms a not-for-profit, because my understanding was they were waiting for the board to make a decision that they wanted the dog park and support a site. So I put the same month that the board decides to support the site, the Friends would start to form the not-for-profit. The problem that I think we're going to have, and the Friends will have, is in the grant, before the Stanton Foundation releases the construction dollars, you have to show a bank statement, a financial statement that the money is in place to be spent immediately on the contractor. But money isn't in place. It will take time, we recognize it, and that's where Amy was looking to see what did other communities do, how long did it take them, and it took a long time to raise the money. It's a daunting task to raise money. We're thrilled you're doing it, but we also recognize it's tough. So I'm trying to be respectful of the Friends, certainly not the opposite, by not holding them to a timeline that they can't meet. And I know there was a lot of discussion of, well, we can't meet this timeline. That's okay. I'm trying to say that we're respecting what the Friends said, which is you won't even start to form until the board chooses a site. So if the board chooses a site by July, the Friends by July could hopefully apply for the 501c3. If
Through
they're
the,
not
through the
ready
chair,
to
could I
spend the
just
money.
raise a clarification question on this? Because my understanding is, and anybody who's going to talk to the Fur Friends, please put some color in there. They want to see the Board of Selectmen approve the site. They also want to see that the design the design application has been submitted. So I think in order to move forward, that's my understanding. Does that anyone else understand that as well? Because then what I'm seeing is here, this is where it kind of,
Yeah.
you have needs and you have challenges that risks that you're trying to mitigate, and they are too on their side, and then
Oh, I understand.
so this is kind of like an area that I think needs to
Well,
get
this is the hardest
worked
part
out.
of the timeline. And quite honestly, the last information we, the select board and myself had was that they would start to form it right after the board agreed on the site, not after the board submitted the application. And I think if that's changed, we should discuss that. But the problem that we are going to have is we have to commit to the Stanton Foundation when we apply for the design, which we're saying it's going to be in September, that we're going to provide 10% of the funds. So we have to be confident that we have the 10% of the funds, because if we don't, it comes back on the town, and quite frankly, I don't have the legal authority to commit 10% of the funds unless we would go to a vote for town meeting, which is why I put that on. If for any reason we don't have the funds and we need a vote at town meeting, and we need to get those funds allocated, we need to go to town meeting, and our hands are, I wouldn't say tied, but it's a difficult process because the board doesn't want to use taxpayer dollars, because that's what they've heard from many of the residents. And maybe we're trying to find a way, we've been trying to find a way for a long time, of how do we commit the 10% of the dollars without jeopardizing what the board has said, which is they won't use those dollars.
Through the chair, may I just ask one more clarifying question, please? At what point was a determination made, and perhaps I missed this step, that no taxpayer dollars would go towards the park? I don't know if this is a question for Mr. Holstrom or
Well, I
Mrs.
can take it,
Jacobson.
and Mr. Holtzman can
But,
jump in, but the board made that decision back in, I believe it was November, at one of their November meetings. And then I did go back and look at it, I stated it at the first meeting of this committee, that there would be no taxpayer dollars going in per the Board of Selectmen, over and above what the grant is. So I can't speak to how they made the decision, but I can tell you when they made it. It was clearly stated when the committee was formed.
Right.
And with regards to the how?
There was discussion, and there was a lot of, there was some input by some of the residents, and especially when this thing with Upland Street came up, that was a big to-do that they didn't want to spend any taxpayer dollars on a dog park because it wasn't going to be for everybody. And that was one of the concerns that people had raised, that, you know what, I haven't got a dog, why am I going to pay for a dog park? And that was part of the discussion that came up. But there was other lighter discussions here and there, but it was determined through the board that we weren't going to have any taxpayer dollars, you know, for the dog park. It was all going to be through this grant and through the 10% through the Fur Friends to put this in place.
So we do have a bit of a challenge, as you said, because we have to commit that we will make the 10% available. We don't need the money in hand when we do the design.
Yes, I understand.
But we do need to commit that we will come up with the 10%. So from a legal standpoint, we've never been able to apply for any grant that required a match without having to show the match was in place. We're trying to find a different way to do it for this one. Amy looked at other communities, and I think 7 out of 9 of the ones she looked at, the money was 100% in place before they even applied. And that's what took so long to apply. We're in a different situation. The money isn't in place. We recognize why. We understand the Friends don't want to commit money yet to form if it may not go through, we may not get the grant. So that's where, how do we commit 10% without committing 10%?
Right.
Commit it to the foundation without taking it from the taxpayers. And so we had suggested, I'm suggesting, at least if we had a letter from the Friends committing to the 10%, we have a verbal, but that isn't, I have to put it in writing by the terms of the Stanton Foundation. I understand a letter has been provided, but not to me. So maybe we can talk about how to do that, but that is definitely an issue. So
Does the letter need to just state that they're gonna provide it, or do they need to state as to when it's gonna be
no,
provided?
well, at this point, I think, we're hoping with the Stanton Foundation, the letter has to come from town administrator that the 10% of the funds will be provided. So my feeling is, we can do the same thing with the Friends. If the Friends can say, we will provide the 10%, that's the equivalent of me saying we'll provide the 10%. I just can't say the town will provide it, because I haven't been authorized to say that.
Right. Through the chair, just a question. I know I brought this up a while back, but through one of my discussions with a member of the Board of Selectmen in Uxbridge who was looking at the dog park project there, they didn't have a Fur Friends group. So they actually had a revolving account through the town where people were making donations for the dog park. And I don't know if that's something possible in the meantime while we're waiting on a nonprofit, if people want to make donations.
It's a
I don't
great
know if that's
question.
possible.
It's a great question. We had this very
I
discussion
think you can
yesterday.
direct those individuals to make a donation to the town,
Okay,
specifically for
a dog
a
park.
dog park. We can set up a special revenue account to accept those donations and reserve it. They would get the tax benefit by donating it to the town without you formally organizing as a 501c3.
Right, okay.
So that's something that can
So
begin.
possible to maybe do the both in the
Yeah,
meantime.
that is an option. We talked about that.
Great,
Yep.
okay, good to know.
Yep. So I think there are ways we can work together on the financial piece of this. So, and I'll just try to go through the rest of this, because I think now you can kind of see why this is happening, because we have to have commitments for things that we don't have yet, and we don't want to pressure the Friends if they're not ready to move forward. That being said, we put under Task 8 Friends fundraisers. That's something that you're going to have to start doing. My understanding is you can't do it until you're a 501c3, but you can do it this way by having the donation go to the town, which is why we put it there. By
And
the
the town
time,
itself cannot actively fundraise either.
Yeah,
It's
we can't.
prohibited.
Right, yeah.
yeah. So so we thought to give the Friends time to start fundraising, I generously gave, I think, until September. That's not a lot of time. I'm saying it's generous. It's not a lot of time. I thought if the Friends could show that they started the process, the board might be more comfortable with me saying, here's a letter committing to the 10%. So I thought over a 4-month period, maybe you could start fundraising, even if the fundraising comes to the town, and we can say, hey, we're on our way. We can start. If we want to move that up, and if the board is comfortable and the Friends are comfortable, that slides back up a little bit. But that's why that date is in September. So I put, once the board is comfortable about the 10%, and they have to be, once they're comfortable, they can then vote to authorize the filing of the application, which I put the very next month in October. Somebody said, why is it going to take the town months to file the application? I'm giving us 1 month to file the application. It's not a lot of time. So I think it's important to let you know that if you didn't take a look at it, that the list of tasks that are required for us to submit this grant are fairly large. We'll get it done, and we can start doing some of it now, but what we can't do is the preliminary design, because we don't have a site. And the preliminary design requires, here's the checklist they give you, there's an awful lot that's required of it. It requires a draft construction budget. The draft construction budget requires contractor mobilization, construction erosion control, site clearing costs associated with clearing and grading, site stormwater drainage, cost of surfacing, fencing costs, walkway, consideration of handicap, hose bibs, parking surface, irrigation, dog and trash waste containers, amenities, landscaping, blah, blah. We can't start on that without a site, without a size, and without knowing how much the budget's going to be. Because if the Friends can only raise 10, which is wonderful, our grant can only be 100. For $100,000, we're going to get a smaller park. If the Friends can raise 25, we can go for the max, and the park can be larger. So a lot of these things are determined based on what monies can be raised. and it's preventing us from doing a budget right now.
So,
And through the chair, the Board of Selectmen are going to need to know that information because we're going to get questions asked of us of where's the money's coming from, how's this going to work. We're not going to vote on something and put something together and put it in play until we know that it's going to be funded and how it's going to be funded. So we need all those plans in place when you come to us and say, yeah, this is what we have and this is what we want to do. Then we have to present it to the public. We have to have a hearing and say, you know what, this is what we've got. This is what the recommendation was that came back from the committee, so we want to hear from the public now and say, do you or don't you? And then we can make our decision from there and go forward. So there's a lot of things.
If we will, we, the town, Bill Coyle and his staff, they can develop the specific draft construction budget. We don't expect you to do that. But what we need from you is the size, how many square feet, what kind of material you're thinking. We need some feedback before we can even move on this. But the number one thing we need is the site, because the site costs are gonna differ based on where you go. So that piece of it, we're giving ourselves a month. We really need to be starting that now, so once we know this is the site you're moving on, we can start. A month isn't a long time to put together this type of an application. They also require design, which Bill's staff, very talented, they can do. They give you a list of what you can submit and what you can't submit. So we need your feedback on what you want, so it's designed to what you're looking for. Do you want a 10,000 square foot small park, a 20,000 large? So,
Through the chair, I want to talk about funding for just a second, because to me, there's a missing piece that I just don't understand. You know, what I'm hearing from the chairman of Selectmen and is being noted is we don't want to spend any additional money type of a thing for the dog park. I don't understand where this $40,000-$50,000 that would be part of the project to move the existing skate park, how that kind of plays into everything. My reaching out to the Stanton Foundation, uncovered that they've never had a grant that had a precedence where some sort of removing of infrastructure and removing it from point A to point B had occurred. And they also made the point of, if you were to do that and spend, even if it got approved, because it felt like it was something that the town should follow up on and call to get some validation on that they felt that you would be even, if you spend 30, 50 grand on a relocation and that's getting covered under the standing grant, then you're actually taking money away from the quality of the dog park itself. So, I mean, this part's all great, and I get what you're saying, that there's some dependencies that maybe not clear in terms of how you can visualize them when you look at this particular plan. I get there's a sequence, but I don't, that to me is a critical path in understanding, where that money's coming from, because to me that tells us yes or no, should we even be looking at Lemansky anymore, or we need to go to another site. So if you're okay with this, Chair, I'd like to understand that, because I see that being an absolute, having impact on whatever timeline comes up. And I don't believe all the committee understands that.
first of all, it's our understanding that the Stanton Foundation will not pay for any of the relocation of the skateboard park. They would only pay for any of the site work related to it once the skateboard park has been moved. The cost, Bill, we've been talking about it, is working really hard to find a way to reduce it by taking on a lot of work ourselves.
Right, we had discussed this yesterday at a meeting, and a number of things. One is the condition of the existing skateboard park is not in horrible condition, but it is cracking to a point within the next few years. It would typically need a resurfacing to extend the life of it. It's not in a condition where the parking lot is, where it needs to be completely pulverized and reconstructed, but it would need a maintenance resurfacing. So the funding, that rather than using the funding for a maintenance resurfacing, we would consider obviously using that funding instead. If the DPW would do the prep work for the park, excavation, gravel base, and then rather than the asphalt going to overlay the existing park, we would use the asphalt to reconstruct the new park. I don't see why we would need to have fencing around it personally. I'm not sure what the intent would be because of close proximity to the track. But I don't really think that necessarily need to have fencing around the skateboard park, so I think that would be a significant savings. So in terms of cost, we had mentioned $30,000 to $45,000 to relocate the skateboard park, I believe.
Through the chair, I believe you had said very, very roughly, 40
Very
to
rough,
50.
yes. And so with the DPW doing a lot of the work, We would probably be more in line with 20,000, and then I think the potential would be there for utilizing town funds, because the funding would have been used to preserve the existing park.
Right, and that goes back to when we first started, we said, Ed and I have had a conversation, and we'd be comfortable making a recommendation at the fall town meeting, assuming at that point the design application is in, which was our intent, to ask for the money to relocate the park, because it's gonna be not that much less than to restore the park than it is to relocate it. And just so everyone knows, I did reach out to one of the gentlemen who was responsible for getting that park there and did a lot of work and was on a committee to raise money. He said it took them 1.5 years, but they got some help from the town, they raised money, they got the park put together, they had a lot of donations, somebody actually built the park and donated it to the town, labor-wise. And he said, I don't want you to hear that we're getting rid of the skateboard park, because that's not anyone's intention. If anything, we would be relocating it. We think it's important, it's well-used, we think there's a better way to lay out the design of Lemansky so that we get a dog park and a skateboard park. This would give you an enhanced facility, it would be new, it would be safer for the children, and it would have to be done anyway. Eddie and I feel we could make that argument, so to speak, to those who have to approve it, which would be Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, and Town Meeting. So we believe there is a way to cover that, Jim, but we can't start that process until it's been decided that this is the site that we want to move it on.
Well, I think that clarification is very helpful, because, you know, if we don't understand, I mean, I get moving the money, sacrificing, changing, and all that stuff behind cost centers, or however you're doing it behind the scenes. The net is, what I'm hearing from you, it is not going to cost the town taxpayer any money, which is what they're gonna wanna hear. So if we've got that,
Right, the dog park won't. The skateboard park relocation will, but so will a refurbishment. So
well, that's it.
our
That's what
intent is...
and you're saying it would need to get done anyway, and then we're just kind of, okay, so I get
And you know,
that.
we're always looking for other grants anyway, and we've got our eye on some other potential grants, we just don't know if we're eligible, but to move this process forward, that would be the best way to do it. So, and I can just wrap this up quickly by just saying, the Stanton Foundation provides for a period of 12 months for design. That's a long time. A lot of communities use the full 12 months. We're projecting to use only 6 of those months. I think we can do it in less. The problem is, and the reason on the timeline you're seeing a 6-month design is if we hit winter and the weather's bad, Bill Coyle has explained that they can't get out and do the survey they need to do the design. So that's where some of this is moving. If we can get it done before winter, we cut that design to 4 months. But the Stanton Foundation gives you 12 months for design, which is that column that you saw that ran all the way down for 12 months, and I made a note beside it saying, this isn't what we're going to use, but this is what we're given under the grant. So we really want to get that design done quickly. So our feeling was, if we can move that along quickly, if we can simultaneously start the regulatory approvals, which again, this is the town that does this, not the committee. We go to planning board, if we have to, Concom, ZBA, anything we have to do runs concurrent with the design. Then we also, on the same month, submit the design to the Stanton Foundation and select the contractor. There's no way to do that in less than 2 months, the contractor, because you have advertising requirements under Chapter 30B that require you put in the central register 2 times, 2 weeks before. You have deadlines. You can't get that done within less than 2 months. So if we do all that, we're saying that if we follow this, we would probably, the park would be completed, I think we had June of 18. So a year from this June, it would be under construction, done by September.
Right, we
That
felt,
could back up depending on weather than the contractor.
and I think we felt through the chair it would be substantially complete by the end of the fall, and hopefully we get the loam and seed and hydro seed down, get the grass growing before winter ideally, because then in springtime, you're gonna want to let the grass establish itself before obviously you let the dogs out on the grass, so you're probably looking closer to, I think, July-ish before you get to that point.
Right, so that's the other piece that was not understanding here. So we think we could get it all done a little over a year from now, have the park under construction, but once it's constructed, understanding if we want grass, it can't be used that first season. Like any of our fields, they can't be used the first season that they're built because the grass has to take. So I think when you're looking at July of 19, that's when you can finally actually use it because of the surfacing. But it should be done in September of 18, which is 18 months from now. So we'd like to substantially.
Substantially complete.
Substantially complete. So we'd like to back it up. We're trying to be as fast as we can, but as you can see, there are pieces here that are gonna take some time. I also don't have any idea how long it takes the Stanton Foundation to approve any of these. And we need 3 sets of approvals from them.
Through the chair, I can provide a little commentary on that. My understanding is if the more you come with your ducks in a row with respect to what they're asking for regarding the application process, and there's minimal iterations going back and forth, they've said that they can approve something in 1 to 2 weeks tops.
Well, that's what I gave them, so that works out great. I put them on, I just said for the month, the very month that we submitted, I'm assuming we're gonna get approvals. That's a,
Julie, could you
Wild card.
just repeat when, because it's kind of difficult, when do you think that the design application in a perfect world, gets submitted?
September.
Okay. So have we accounted for this piece, right? As of a week and a half ago, the Stanton is only giving out 10 grants, 10 design grants per year. And 3 of them had been used up and 4 additional ones were under application. So, we can call back in a couple of weeks and find out where those 4 are, but, obviously September to me, there's a risk associated, I'm putting out on the table, that we could be, we could have all our ducks in a row, we can go for the grant, and at that point, we're not there yet.
I don't disagree with you, we can try to get it done earlier than that. The site needs to be selected, so to back up, all these tasks need to be backed up, which means the cost analysis has to be done, the site has to be chosen, the size has to be chosen, the cost analysis has to be done, the public outreach has to be done. You have to go to the Board of Selectmen, you have to get the Friends to commit to the 10% in enough format that the Stanton Foundation will accept, and then we can submit. Under any circumstance, we couldn't see that happening before July, just for advertising alone, for requirements to post things. That's only, we're talking 3 months.
Through the chair, just to back up to a point before Jim began asking the very valid question, a question from Mr. Coyle. If the hydro seeding for grass is not the surface cover selected, would it be possible to have the date be any sooner? For example, if the decision was made to do the rice stone or whatever. I know we've had conversation with Ms. Contois about mixing ground cover throughout the park as a possibility, and we've not come to a consensus. But while we have your expertise, could you please?
I think what it would potentially do is allow you to open the park probably just before winter time. So I'm not sure what you would probably gain sometime in the spring rather than waiting until July. So obviously if you have different surface treatment, that's going to save some time. But keep in mind too, we're also we have to look at the contract, the schedule. When we award a contract, a lot of times we'll call the contractor when you're starting, and they'll say, well, to be honest with you, I have those projects I'm wrapping up, and so sometimes their schedule and projects they're working on, as much as we can provide them a completion date and push them as aggressively as we can, sometimes they have unforeseen delays. Wet weather can delay a project, which is similar to what we're seeing now. So it really, a lot of things can be very fluid to the whole process.
Thank you.
Amy had actually found a couple of communities that went out to bid several times and didn't even get any bids. That can happen too. Was it Dartmouth? A couple of
Off the top
communities.
of my head, I don't remember, but I know there were at least 2 communities. One put it out to bid twice in the spring. They didn't have any contractors that would work within the town's budget, so then they had to wait until winter of that year to put it out to bid again, when the contractors were a little less busy and more apt to take on the project within that budget.
Through the chair, one of the communities was East Bridgewater, and the other one I don't recall off the top of my head when I did much of the same research I think you did.
And through the chair, the playground's a good example that the town manager used at the Pappas site. In that project, we completed that project after the last day that we had to have that project completed and open for July 3rd Independence Day celebration. But keep in mind, that was a rubber flooring on the playground. The outside areas we had to tape off because they were longer seated. Obviously, we don't want the kids running through them.
Right. And if the chair wouldn't mind, because Amy's got some really good information that I think might be helpful to the committee. on other dog parks. We're happy to share it with you.
You guys just wanna, you wanted to pass it down?
Through the chair, can I ask Julie a question? With respect to how you're trying to go after and deal with the relocation, in terms of presenting it to the selectmen, in terms of presenting this to, people in that area, right? Do you see that these things are now related? You can't do one without the other, they're not, mutually exclusive? And so if we were to go to the Board of Selectmen and we're saying we need 40, 35, 20 grand, whatever that number is, then you folks would be able to provide the data
Oh, yeah.
that supports what that would be.
That's our responsibility.
Okay.
We just can't do that yet until we know for sure that this is the site you're going for. So we're behind the scenes looking at those things now, understanding, that's why we're all watching your meetings, because we want to see how far along it's getting, and are we ready to start making these calls that we need to make to accomplish that.
Okay, so, a few more comments if I could. So we haven't made, I don't know if we made the official motion, maybe the secretary can say this, but I believe now with what you've said with respect to the 40, 50, 20 grand, whatever it is, that our, us choosing Lemansky is a go. We can do the formal aspect of making that motion, once everyone goes.
Through the chair, that was a vote.
That was,
We
yeah.
did,
Okay.
determine Lemansky to be a
Okay.
preferred site, and we continued with developing data around Boy Street as a secondary site until we came to a consensus that Lemansky was where we wanted to go, and that was supported by a vote that was unanimous 3 meetings
Okay.
ago.
And that's exactly why I contacted the person who was very much involved in the skateboard park, because once you made that vote, I didn't want this person to hear it and think, well, no one called me, what's happening
Yeah.
to the park that I raised money for? So just wanted to assure him, and he was very happy.
Was he understand?
He was very supportive. He said, I'm just happy to hear that the town is willing to make a recommendation to keep the park. And even if it's been relocated, his concern is he wants to keep the park for the access for the children. It was his children's class that did it as a project with the school, and it's important to them, just like this is important to you. So he was great.
So,
And he's going to do some research for me too on some how they did it, what funds went into it. We just got to be careful that no funds went in that say it has to stay on that one location. I don't think there were, but we got to cross the T's just to be sure.
So I, at this point, I think, to me, the biggest risk that's on the table is that we, is the Fur Friends in Town interaction and steps and, what people are willing to do. I'm of the opinion that that's critical path now, that's the new critical path. And we need to make sure whatever the handshake agreement that needs to take place in order that both sides have a level of comfort on what that arrangement is. We need to get there as soon as possible. I think we need to do that before we start doing outreach. Because for whatever reason, if that doesn't get worked out, then I think it's fair to say that, we have a problem with being able to move forward with this project. Anyone else see any other risks with respect to what we've heard?
Well, to
So
your,
I see risks, yeah, I see lots of risks.
to your point, Jim, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm interrupting. I do that a lot.
You're forgiven, I'm interrupting you,
Go for it.
actually. Bill, in terms of what you know, and this is, I guess, to both you and Amy, is grass the preferred surface? Is that where we should be looking and not? And I know the decision is not this committee's to make, but is that,
I have my opinion,
Yeah.
but I would defer to the animal control officer.
Yeah.
Amy, I think, would be the expert on what the dogs prefer versus the animal.
okay, the other part of this is,
Asphalt.
we had looked at what we thought was about 10 and 20,000 square feet for the small dog, large dog parks. Is there any value with the surface that, I hate to use the word "we" because it's not this committee that's contemplating, but somewhere down the line, someone's gonna contemplate. Is there any value in looking at a slightly smaller park?
Well,
Does that make anybody's task easier along the way?
if Amy can jump in, but I think if you were successful in getting the grant, I think maximizing the grant would probably be the best
Would be the
option.
best, okay, so we should not be looking
And
to.
I'll go back to your first question. The only concern I have, and actually is relative to the dogs, but it's more of a maintenance concern. I think the pea stone or the smaller stone becomes a little harder for us to maintain. The grass mowing and weed whacking is pretty conventional. Sometimes the stones get kicked around and it becomes harder to keep them within the park, and we find these stones are all over the place, and so maintenance-wise, they tend to be kind of a headache.
Thank you.
Through the chair. I mean, there are a lot of factors and things to consider when you look at the surfaces, and especially everything connects to one another. So if you're considering a smaller park and you're still considering grass as your surface, that means you have the same volume of dogs on a smaller surface. So that means the grass is probably going to get kicked up more. In weather like this, that might mean there's going to be more maintenance done where seating has to be put down again, unless we have dogs running around through mud. There's other surface options that the Stanton Foundation does mention on their website that are more costly than grass initially and have other maintenance concerns, but you're not dealing with possibly annually reseeding and closing down sections of the park at a time and things like that. A lot of parks seem to do a combination of surfaces, so that way even if you do have to temporarily close off one section because it's just been seeded and you need the seed to set, you can use a different portion of the park. I'd really refer you guys to some of the parks that are already established and see, especially if you have an idea of the size that you're looking at, look at similarly sized parks and how their grounds have held up. Millbury, for example, when I did go there last year, it seemed like the surface of their park was well maintained, but they also have an 1.5 acres. I believe Millbury only has 600 dogs licensed. I don't know how many Sutton does, so their population is much smaller and they have a greater area to work with, so it's not going to, the surface isn't getting the abuse that, say, you'd see at Lemansky.
So, Mr. Chairman, I know Ed and I, we have a finance committee meeting, and I know, but if you could, if Amy could just show you this real quick, what you have, and then you can do with it as you want, it might be helpful. I know I went back, the packet we gave you on the first night did have a list of other dog parks in the state on it. If you need us to resend that, we're happy to. But Amy did some research on some of them anyway to give to you tonight.
So the packet, what we got out of watching your meeting last week is that it did seem like the committee as a whole had a lot of frustration with the timeline and that you felt pressure and rushed in the beginning, but to not see the fruits of your labor for possibly several years. We certainly understand that.
Thank you.
but-
Goodbye. Thank you. I'm sorry. We'll be next door if something comes up. We can always run back over.
You wanted to close
Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't mind. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Good luck.
Thank you all, and thank you for all you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any questions, call.
So we did understand, your initial frustration with everything, but I think the part that might be being missed right now is that finding the location is the essential part to move everything. We can't do any of the other tasks that Julie mentioned without a location. So certainly, the quicker everyone works, the sooner we have a proposed location, the sooner we can move on creating a design with the Fur Friends fundraising for that 10% match. But none of that can come into play without a location. So I know you guys feel rushed, but to get the project done sooner, we need a location.
To clarify, if I may, through the chair, I don't intend to speak for the committee or how we feel as an overall statement, but I do think we feel like a lot of contingent information has appeared that we were previously unaware of and not informed of.
Yeah.
Therefore, that creates fundamental roadblocks, and I wish I had known that the other folks were going to depart prior to my comments, but in a perfect world, we would all have ample time to verbalize our concerns. So in no way do I want to take away from your statement about selection of size, but I think we're trying to digest information that none of us, again, to use a Jim word, had visibility into.
Yeah, I think to me, it's expectation setting and communication, whatever you want to term it. So, we are where we are right now. So, lessons learned. There's a few things we can learn about how to formulate a special committee going forward that, you know, we can provide feedback back to the town. I don't feel that we're rushed. I felt like I think we were under the impression we were going to try to move fast and that we'd be able to pull this off this year. And the reality is that has a low probability of happening at this point this year.
Yeah, I mean, if we had gotten this
Zero
timeline, our first
probability.
meeting,
Our first meeting.
then we would have been much better off.
Well, also, I mean, the way that we got it, the view that we had, we're sitting there trying to,
Yeah.
piece
Yeah.
together
This is
different
what we
pieces
got.
of paper.
So like my last page
And then there was no
literally has
context. I
nothing.
mean, it was dropped
Yeah,
off
and
at our meeting,
just-
and there was no
sorry,
context
Through
around
the
it.
chair, just to clarify on that, the timeline was requested by a member of the committee. Julie did spend a lot of time putting it together. The way it was sent over was in an Excel spreadsheet.
There was both those sent over.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
it's-
unfortunately, the Excel spreadsheet on the computer stretched
Yes.
across the screen,
Yeah.
which
No, I get it.
unfortunately doesn't print well to paper. I can't speak for what was provided to the committee
No,
on
I-
different sheets of
and-
paper, but
And through the chair, I get that, and I think what it was that it was this that we were handed, and it wasn't an Excel sheet, and that's no fault to you. But if you're not familiar with how to read it and what you're looking at, it is really difficult, and,
And it helped to have Julie's explanations. too,
yeah,
about
I would
why things
have,
were where and
that
when.
would have been better,
That would have been
like
helpful
both.
as well.
Right.
Thanks,
I
And
think-
through the chair, I think Julie did offer to come to the last meeting.
I was not aware of that, I'm sorry.
Me neither.
Through the
Yeah, she
chair, I
was-
was not.
She had and I turned her away.
No, I was just not aware of that.
Yeah, so I think
I thought she had a conflict, but okay.
through the
Okay, so we were not as a group, I guess, not.
So through the chair, I think a lot of questions were answered
Answered
and
tonight.
maybe, very positive now moving
Yes.
forward.
Thank
And
you.
now that you have a good understanding of kind of how we see the project moving forward. And
Yeah.
I think everybody between the committee and the town, we seem to be more on the same page in terms of now we all better understand the process. And it is aggressive. Unfortunately, public sector, we have very formal bidding processes that we have to follow, and advertising and prevailing wage laws, and a lot of things that we have to follow on permitting. It's not like private sector where you have the money, you still have the permitting, but you can probably move along a little quicker.
Through the chair, I get that,
Yeah,
but we were kind of pushed
yeah.
to do it.
Well,
it.
yeah.
So with not having this timeline and that do it, and I'm gonna say this because I said I wanted to say this. I meditate every Wednesday at 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and I gave up my meditation to do this, all right? And so for me, it's frustrating that we were, kind of geared towards one location, and then all of a sudden, there were other stipulations put with the location. So this meeting, in hindsight, 2020, right, should have happened a couple weeks ago with all of us, and then we would probably be on a better path. So that's just, my deal.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to be verbal about how I feel and how it was presented. And like Jim said, you can ask the same question to 20 people, you get
And I
20
think
answers.
maybe that's just how things were perceived. I don't think
Sure.
the town never had the vision that this would be constructed by the end of the year.
No,
So I think-
I'm also saying that
Sure.
was perceived.
Right,
So
right.
I think it was just, we were so bent on getting this to the board.
Sure.
And-
Which I
and-
think is still a
It is still
a
a
great
yes.
idea. That's
That's
how
the
it
first
should.
step.
But I think that also, again, I'm gonna reiterate myself. This meeting should have happened a couple of weeks ago on the timeline, and hindsight is 2020, so now we should just go forward.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And through the chair, just to kind of explain what I did hand out so it doesn't look like just a lot of bubbles and words on the page. I just wanted to kind of give a clear representation of what some of the other communities in Massachusetts have faced, timelines that they've come across with the entire dog park process that they've gone through. There's a number of different communities here. The first parks mentioned in the packet are still in the process of establishing their dog park. It's only the last 3 in the packet, so that would be Millbury Sutton at the Butler Farm, Greenfield Dog Park at the Green River Park, and Danvers Dog Park at the Endicott Park. Those are the only 3 that actually have established open dog parks at this time. And just kind of looking this over, taking in some of the information, you can see some of the obstacles that some other towns have faced. Why, maybe some of these processes have been longer than others. The time ranges range from 2 years to 11 years to get a park open. There are many different factors that play into that. The thing that makes Auburn kind of unique is with a lot of these towns, it's individual groups, it's 501c3s, it's committees that are bringing the proposal to the town, that are convincing the town that yes, we want a dog park. We have a lot of people that would also like a dog park, versus it's kind of, at least in the beginning process, a lot more driven by the town of Auburn last year when we started the research project, trying to bring it forward to the community to see if the community was interested in this. So we kind of have that working towards us, where the community doesn't have the obstacle of trying to convince town officials that this is something that would be beneficial to the community. We agree with that. It's just the other steps in the process, the raising of the money, community outreach. Natick, they have a group called FIDO. That's their 501c3 that did 3 years of community outreach and fundraising before they even brought it before town meeting for approval to go forward with their project. So you can see kind of different ways that it's happened in different towns. Natick, Uxbridge, Barnstable, Millbury, Sutton, Danvers, they all had fundraising in place before the town even applied for the grant. So they had that 10% match ready to go to give to the town. A couple of the other parks in Ledlow, their Conservation Commission actually donated the 10% match, which was $25,000, so that was a hefty donation. West Bridgewater, the town, they took it to a town meeting vote, and the town actually voted to provide the 10% match through taxpayer dollars. Other ones, Greenfield, Greenfield and Watertown included their dog parks and a greater renovation of a recreational complex. So they could use a combination of funds from state funding, the Stanton Foundation, town money. So everybody does it a little bit differently, but it's really good to kind of look at other towns, look at ways they did it, possibly mistakes they made along the way, or, some of these towns are very aggressive with their fundraising deadlines, how they did that to kind of steer everybody.
Through the chair, that was, not to keep going back on the last meeting, but that was my pretty much biggest concern with the timeline, was the Fur Friends, knowing the Fur Friends very well, and that they've been very clear that they want approval from the Board of Selectmen for a site, and applying for the Stanton grant before they become an established 501c3. That was what threw me off, because I thought that was known. So seeing it kind of like right there, and then the design part happening later, is what concerned me more or less, just that may be an issue. But knowing that there's the opportunity potentially to raise money without having to establish first is huge.
Yeah.
It's absolutely huge.
It is huge.
Then they could potentially start
Right.
like tomorrow if they
Yeah.
wanted.
Yeah, and I mean, and this is the thing too, you still want to know that this is going to happen, because if we're going to be raising money, if you're going to become a 501c3 and spend $700 to do that, and then know that it can be turned down because a couple of NIMBYs are, dogs are going to bark, that's like really frustrating and really upsetting. And there's people who have put a lot of time and energy into this, including in the town administration. So I guess my piece is that knowing that is really good. I agree with everybody that having a little bit more clarification was really huge. But we still are going to need clarification from the Fur Friends that they're still on board. And I think that's a huge piece. Seeing examples of towns that have done and provided the money in advance is great, but that doesn't guarantee that they're going to want to do that, if that makes sense. So I think there still needs to be a conversation that happens with them.
Through the chair, I'd like to add on to Nicole. I mean, to me, we got a few pieces of information, but I feel that this is the biggest risk right now, is that we need to have whatever joint agreement of sequencing of steps at what particular time. that's critical. I mean, I don't see us moving forward with, I mean, we can get everything ready, you know, in terms of getting ready to do a community meeting, you know, whatever information we want to share and that type of stuff in parallel, so that we're not losing time on that front. But I don't believe that we can go forward with the community, you know, meeting until we know for sure that the Fur Friends in the town are united with whatever their, you know, whatever the sequencing of these tasks might be. So I guess that to me is the biggest risk. So my motion is we need to find a way on how we get this kind of to come together. I'm not sure the best way how to facilitate that, but I think we need to have some folks come together from both sides of the town and Fur Friends, and just, I mean, whether it's a phone call, an in-person, I don't know, but let's make sure that the devil's in the details, I kind of feel, with respect to this one.
Through the chair, can I ask a question, I guess? Looking at this, what kind of jumps out at me is one of the most important things to happen is to have that public hearing, because you need to know, do you have public support for that location? Because sometimes, as much as a project seems like a great idea, and then you hold a public hearing, and then you're amazed at the opposition. You look at it and say, you have to be kidding me, I can't believe nobody wants it there. So I think that's a critical element. I think, and I agree with you, Jim, all these other steps we can figure out, and we can meet again if we need to, or if you want to. But I think having that public meeting is critical, because I think then you'll know, either I have overwhelming support, we had lukewarm support, we had no support. Because then when you're going to the selectmen or to the Fur Friends, you know we have a viable location, we have support by the community. We know roughly what the cost is going to be.
So if I can clarify?
Sure.
I mean, I'm not disagreeing with anything you just said. It's kind of sequencing, right? My concern is if we go out and we communicate, it's Lemansky, it's Lemansky, it's Lemansky, and then for whatever reason, you know, Fur Friends and the town can't come to an agreement that they both can, you know, feel good about, then at that point the dog park can't go forward, because of that extra 10% is now in limbo.
Right.
So if you can jump in.
All right, through the chair. I mean, I think the initial meeting or listening session, hearing, however you want to propose your initial public outreach is the most important part, because you don't want to necessarily throw an idea down everybody's throat, but you want to present, you know, the work that you've done, you know, maybe show that you have looked at other locations, why you think Lemansky is the best option from the accumulation of all the time and effort that you put into it, and get the feedback. Because that first session you might get overwhelming opposition and you want to back off, relook at things, maybe figure out if there's a different location that will have more community support, and then you continue your outreach efforts. It's not you against the community, it's everybody working together to find what everybody wants and is the most efficient.
And through the chair, just speaking from the 12 Upland Street experience, the town put a ton of work in there to propose a nice design and to try to do community outreach. The Board of Selectmen had 2 meetings and heard a lot of feedback, and I think in a sense that did scare some big supporters, and you know, did show the risk of forming a 501(c)(3). So if you guys, I think it's vital for you to have that public outreach, because you'll have that as a tool to bring back to the Fur Friends as well and say, look, this time went a lot better, we didn't really receive that much opposition. You can feel more comfortable moving forward to have people make donations to the town and then set up. Because, and if you're concerned with time, if you don't have a public meeting, everything's going to get pushed down because we can't move forward.
Well, and through the
obviously
chair,
don't agree.
I think our biggest, other than the 10%, I think our biggest deal was the skate park. We were so up in the air. Where was all of a sudden we got an email saying that it was going to be 40 or 50,000, and we knew that the Stanton grant was not going to cover that.
Yep.
And so I really feel like that's what put the brakes on, because we had already decided Lemansky was it, and then all of a sudden this little wobble came along like, oh, there is nothing that's covering that moving over here. And for you guys to come in and say, okay, yeah, this is more like a $20,000 project. This is more like something that we would be able to use the taxpayers' money because that money would have been used to resurface it anyway. So I want to say that that was a big, do you feel like that was it was a big thing holding us back from actually, you know, we did choose the site, but I think we still really were kind of going, what are we going to do if that falls through? Because that's going to be the deal breaker.
Chair, through the chair, just a point of clarification, if I may. Amy, are you suggesting that this community meeting that you're proposing to initiate the process be distinct from the notification of butters, that process? And that it be a different meeting?
No, I'm
No,
still,
same meeting.
sorry, yes, I'm talking about the same meeting.
right.
Okay.
I mean, it's very important to, like, again, like we saw at 12 Upland, to get the opinion of the people that it's going to directly affect the most. I mean, we want the entire community's opinion and, you know, any suggestions that they can make to make it a good project, but to at least get the support of the people that are going to be abutters of this project, that's...
I hear the logic, absolutely. I think my concern echoes what I believe Jim's concern to be with regards to sequencing. I feel like based on the information we've received this evening, I think it is slightly encouraging. That said, I don't feel like we're in a position to have a meeting and speak from a position of authority.
I think there's a middle ground here, right? There's nothing stopping us right now to continue on with planning for outreach, right? We're not ready to press the button because not everything's ready to do outreach as we speak, right? We have a deck that we put together. We agreed that we needed to make some edits and changes to it, put some more data, you know, information, et cetera, et cetera. I'd have to believe that it is probably reasonable to think that the town and Fur Friends could have a discussion by within a week where they vet out what's possible and what's not. And at that point, if they come back to us and say it's possible, then we're already moving down the road with respect to outreach. If they say no go, well then, you know, at that point we haven't communicated out a date to anyone, and at that point we can stop and, you know, figure out where we are at that
Given
point.
that we are not empowered to speak on behalf of the town or the Fur Friends,
Right.
perhaps, all right, so I would make a motion to recommend that the town and the Fur Friends engage in a discussion at the earliest point possible.
Super quick clarification too, and
Yes.
I totally agree, but if you want it the 27th, this is just to think about. I need those letters, because I'm the one that's going to be sending them out
Right.
by next Wednesday.
That's what I was,
So that's
that's
a
why I
big-
brought up
yeah.
the calendar, I'm like, we don't have time to postpone this.
Yeah, so if you want it,
Mhm.
just to be
And I'm
aware.
sorry, Bill, I know I'm
No, through
interrupting.
the chair, I think that certainly we can have dialogue with the Fur Friends, but I wouldn't let that slow your public meeting down.
I'm
I think
with
that
that.
that is
Yeah, I
critical.
agree.
Yep.
Until that meeting happens, I think you're at a standstill, really. I mean, you can do other things, but that you have to have that meeting.
I agree.
Because if you don't have that meeting, you don't know if you have support. I can tell you through the town administration side, if we, engineering, DPW, animal control, the selectmen's office, the administration, not the selectmen, you still need their vote. But as the administration part of the town government, if we thought there was something that we were extremely concerned with and said, this project, we can't support this, we would have spoken up by now and said, we have some real concerns with this area. None of us have said that because we all feel as though this is a good location in terms of it's viable. The biggest part you need to determine is, do you have public support
And
for it?
nor do I think that anyone has issues with the Fur Friends or their ability to raise. So I really don't see that being an issue for, do I agree? Yes, of course, reach out,
Yeah.
communicate, but at least personally, I haven't heard anything.
And through, sorry,
No,
through the
go
chair, I also am not aware of there being any issues or anything like that between the town and the Fur Friends.
Yep.
The last communications we had with them was that they were committed to fundraising, to trying to fundraise the full 10%, but they weren't comfortable doing that because they do put time and effort and money into that whole process. They didn't want to do that until the Board of Selectmen had an approved location.
Yep. Right.
And the Board of Selectmen, sorry,
No, go for
the
it.
Board of Selectmen won't approve a location that doesn't have community support.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So it all falls back to the public outreach. And again, we're not saying you have to do your outreach in a specific way. Where we definitely recommend having an outreach directed towards the abutters. Different towns have done it different ways, and again, you can look into that. One of the towns, they had a meeting in that precinct where they were proposing that part to kind of get a broader group. And I know these meetings are public meetings. There aren't a lot of attendees from the public where they could attend and give their concerns and thoughts. But this whole process is stalled if you don't have the support from the community.
I agree. The president of the Fur Friends reached out to me after last meeting. She said that nothing has changed between them and the town. She wrote a letter to Mr. Prouty saying the exact same thing. Julie just said the same thing. There's nothing that's changed between the town and the Fur Friends. Right now, we're the ones holding up the process. We need to get this, we need to get the meeting out, we need to get the outreach done, we need to propose to the Board of Selectmen before anything else can go forward.
And in no way am I suggesting that there are issues between the Fur Friends or the town of Auburn, but I am stating that I don't feel comfortable speaking on their behalf in any way.
Through the chair, I don't think we need to. I think our public hearing or meeting, I wasn't sure how to title it, by the way, when we get to the letter, because I don't know the difference. But I think it needs to be more informational than strictly promotional, and I know I said that last week. Not that the information and facts alone aren't promotional, because honestly, through all our research, that's what we found, that the benefits far outweigh any, negative impacts of a dog park, truly, for people, non-dog owners or dog owners alike. So I think it's more informational. We have the statement from the Fur Friends that they're willing to do the 10%. That's a big part of the puzzle, explaining why we want it in that location. I don't think we need to speak on anyone's behalf to promote, to explain our committee's selection of Lemansky.
To be clear, just a point of clarification, I was not speaking with regards to the meeting.
Okay.
I was speaking in general with regards to the fact that it's clear that there
Okay.
needs to be continued conversation. It's clear from my perspective
yeah.
that there needs to be continued conversation between the Fur Friends and the town, and that I was not implying that there were issues. But I think that with regards to sequencing, that needs to happen before we invest any more, before we, to be frank, waste any more time.
And I think we're all trying to get the same end result, and I think, and through the chair, once you have that public informational meeting, is what I would probably call it, and not a hearing.
Right.
Once you have that, I think a lot of things can happen once that's done. Because if you find that we do have public support, and we didn't have hundreds of people showing up in opposition, at that point, I think then we can look at what's the next step. Well, fundraising needs to start happening. We have support, and they may say we're not going to fundraise until the Board of Selectmen vote. That's fine.
Right.
That's their choice, and I understand that. But I think, so having this public informational meeting, and then going before the Board of Selectmen, getting their support, the sooner all this can happen and the fundraising can happen, all the steps beyond that can happen. So, I mean, you can take more time, obviously, until the committee's comfortable presenting it, until you feel as though you're ready to go before the public. I understand that, but just obviously the schedule that Julie's prepared is contingent upon that one step, and if that slides, then all of this will slide beyond that.
I understand that. However, through the chair, you had also indicated, Mr. Prouty, that there would be some issue on getting on the agenda for the Board of Selectmen, because this is potentially a busy time of year. Well, this is a busy time of year, so there could potentially be issue getting on the agenda. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, but, I think that depends on the Board of Selectmen. Certainly doesn't,
Well, we
Also-
certainly weren't approved the
Yeah.
first time we requested,
The
so...
sooner we're ready, the sooner, the more time we'll have to get on, and then the sooner we can present.
That the magical doors will open.
Yes,
Allowing us.
exactly, yes.
Allowing us to
Yes.
appear.
And I think right now is a busy time.
Oh, yeah, like
The finance meetings and town meeting. By the time you have your public meeting and make recommendation, it'll probably, I'm assuming it's going to occur after town meeting, so things will probably be slowing down a little bit then. So and they would meet with you at any time. I don't think they'd ever say, listen, we're too busy for you right now, but I can't speak for them. But I can tell you, by the time you have your meeting, a lot of that will be behind them.
Yeah, and
As I understand from what was said tonight, there are two meetings involving the Board of Selectmen. One is when we present our recommendations. Two is their intent to have a public
They want to hear from the
meeting
public.
or hearing, so.
But their public hearing would be outside of our scope, correct?
Oh,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
oh, yes.
We can be there.
We have two things to do, as I see it.
Handing out cupcakes.
And one is to make
Our selection.
the abutters, whatever you want to call that meeting, because certainly everyone is invited to come to us.
Yes,
But that is not to guarantee, I want to say this correctly, but it's not to guarantee that there is perfect accord between fur friends and town administration. That we can't do, and I can't see us saying to either of those groups, contact the other and meet with them.
Well, I made a respectful motion to
You
recommend
was very respectful.
that they engage, because we have no authority, and that's abundantly clear.
And maybe I should read parts of this letter I have from Fur Friends. It says the Fur Friends group would begin fundraising if, three things, the Board of Selectmen votes and approves the site location. That's what we're gonna ask them to do. No more than that. If the town administration receives the approval from the Stanton organization to utilize funds available through their grant. Well, until we have initiated the meeting with the public, that's not gonna happen. They're not gonna submit an application until we've had that public meeting, until we've gone to them and said, this is a preferred location. And then finally, it's necessary for us to establish a commitment deadline of January 1st, 2018. So we've got 9 months to see that there is a commitment from Stanton. So it seems to me the most immediate need in terms of the Fur Friends is for us to get out of their way.
Yep.
It's to complete what we were assigned to do. I would like to express further that we are in complete support of the Lemansky site. So that's something that, that's something that we have agreement on. We can't, and I agree with you, we can do nothing to speed up the process or make the project happen. That's right.
Yep.
We have no authority as to the site. That's true. That's, for us to recommend and eventually for the selectmen to say, that's a fine site, go ahead. But until that's done, I don't see any application being made to Stanton.
Sorry, through the chair.
Go ahead.
And I know the idea of a public meeting, hearing, listening session can be daunting. And I mean, certainly, if you think it's going to help your committee, you could always invite the Fur Friends group to the meeting to show the community that they're there to stand with you guys, to support the park, to raise the money. It's going to look good to the community, to the people that show up. But again, the kind of reiterating what I said before, you could have the meeting and maybe there isn't public support for Lemansky, so maybe you have to go back to the other locations you reviewed that might not have been as perfect to you as Lemansky, but without public support, Lemansky won't be perfect. So then maybe you have to go back and review other site locations and see how you can make that site work within the budget and have public support. So again, you can't get the ball rolling if you don't know the community will support that location. We realized that, especially with 12 Upland, we put a lot of time and effort into analyzing all the different sites, creating a proposal for 12 Upland, but we were hit with such extreme disapproval from the immediate abutters that it wasn't something that we could go forward with, that it was so severe that Board of Selectmen wanted 12 Upland Street removed from your list of potential locations. So again, if you don't do the outreach portion, you can't move forward.
Yeah.
The difficult part too is when you do have the public information meetings, a lot of times the people who do show up to those meetings, unfortunately, are opposed to it.
Yep.
And then that's just the nature of a lot of public meetings. So I think having the Fur Friends there as well, having that support is important to get another sense of what the community's feeling is for the project, so.
I would agree that that would be helpful to us to gain public support, but I'm not sure that the Fur Friends want to make that public commitment at this point.
Sure.
I think they want a site chosen and would see that, I would hope that they would see that the town then has agreed to build a dog park in the town, and that's, you know, when you would ask the Fur Friends to orally commit to this. But I don't think that, I think that they feel somehow constrained to make a statement that backs up what we have said about them. And I don't know that that's fair, that's fair for us to say,
I don't think
well,
we ever
now,
asked for that.
come in here, yeah.
Yeah,
No, I don't think we
ever
have,
asked
and I don't
for
think that at this point that I want to do that.
Yeah.
It would be nice if a lot of the Fur Friends come to that meeting and get up and say, we're all in favor of this location, we're all in favor of a dog park, we love it. But I don't think that the Fur Friends would look favorably on us saying, come to that meeting and tell these people
Yeah.
what your commitment is.
And we never asked for that.
No, I think it was just if they come.
Yeah, through the chair, I think, sorry if I wasn't clear, I'm not saying the Fur Friends
No.
attend necessarily in support of Lemansky, but to have their attendance to show that they support a dog park
Yep.
in town. And I certainly don't want to speak for the Fur Friends group to say, you know, where their preferred location would be. But I know for, again, the 12 Upland presentation, they did come with a presentation that was very informative, that was their own research into why a dog park would help the community. What I anticipate is you might not have the same audience at your meeting that we had, because again, we had 12 Upland, the Packagug area. You're going to have a different section of town, maybe some other people that have heard of the meeting, gone to it, but still don't really know what a dog park is. So even if, you know, the Fur Friends attended just to kind of explain, this is what a dog park is, or just to be there to show that if they're making the commitment to help raise funds, that's probably going to answer some of the questions that community has if they don't want their taxpayers' money going towards it.
And through the chair, just to clarify more about like scheduling for Board of Selectmen, there are times where, of course, there's an abundance on the agendas, and in respect to department heads, your time, administration time, of course, sometimes it's just not going to be on there. But if you give, I'm not going to speak for them, but they're very good about if you give them enough time, they'll get you on there, and they'll move around other stuff that can be moved around. They wouldn't push this further than it needed, so don't be worried about that. I can't see that being an issue.
So through the chair, I'd like to make a suggestion. A note.
Well, wait a minute, we've got a motion, I think. Have we got a motion on the floor?
It does not feel as though the committee concurs, and that's fine. I'm used to being in the minority. But that said, I think, although we cannot speak for the Fur Friends nor the town of Auburn, and I certainly don't want to get into a facilitation or a mediation role, I do think it is essential to suggest respectfully that we promote dialogue. I don't know how that language
can be any more
Second.
user-friendly and And I didn't even write down my own motion, so.
And I think, I mean, here's reality. The Fur Friends are gonna watch this video. So, I mean, to me, it's out on the table. If they have concerns about what was discussed or they feel they need more information, at that point, it's for them to go ahead and dig into it further. So what my suggestion would be, let's shift gears, just talk about timing, dates, dependencies, because we can't execute a plan that has a whole bunch of missing pieces to it.
No,
Through the chair, can I just
Nope.
make one more clarification?
you surely can.
And I kind of get the feeling that there is a sense of lack of communication between the Fur Friends and the town of Auburn. But since the last time we have spoken with them, there hasn't been any progression and any need to continue conversations since the last time we
That's
spoke.
what, yep.
So that's kind of something to think about, that we're not speaking with them, or anything like that. It's just there hasn't been any new information to discuss without a location.
Through the chair, respectfully, I'm not confident that that's 100% accurate, because some of the information, like the 6 months, I don't know if that's known to the Fur Friends.
Sorry,
The
6
ability to
months.
The 6
fundraise.
months that it takes to form a 501c3. It may be known, I don't know for sure. Being able to fundraise through the town in advance of that 501c3, also new information, and potentially asking them to fundraise kind of alongside of the application process is also at least new information for them. I don't know if that's something that they maybe Julie thought was known, but I'm not confident in any of this, and I obviously can't speak on their behalf, but I'm pretty sure they don't know any of what I just said, and I think it's important for them to know that.
Well, I think, through the chair, the one key point I'd want to make, that when we met this week, the three of us with the town manager and the assistant town manager, we understood there was significant concerns about the schedule. So we looked at it and said, is there anything that can be done to try to accelerate the schedule? And I think the topic of fundraising with individuals making donations through the town did come up at that point. So that's only something that we started discussing this week.
Yep.
So it's not something that we thought of 2 months ago, but it's something that's new, and we think it's a viable option. So we had to meet to discuss it. So that is a new idea. I think it's a great idea, and I think it's new to all of us this week. So it's something that we really, again, focusing on the schedule, we said we can accelerate it this much by doing this.
Yep.
And through the chair.
Yeah, sorry, no, go ahead.
I think it's fantastic, and talk about creative problem solving. I think it's wonderful that you were able to develop this potential solution to a difficult situation. Having said that, again, I think this is a unique situation, working with a Friends of group and a potential 501c3. I'm not sure there's that many of them in town. Are there?
Well, it's not that unique for us, because it's not uncommon. Similarly, the playground was constructed the same way. It was 501c3. They had their fundraising going on, so that wasn't unusual. Also, the Pappas Recreational Facility, I believe, also had separate fundraising going on. So quite often there are friends of groups.
That's wonderful. So it's a process that's familiar to you folks. But I think the assumption is that it is familiar to the Fur Friends, and in fact that it's not. So I just think that sharing your wealth of knowledge, and I don't mean you folks in the room, I mean the establishment of the town of Auburn, that would be helpful dialogue for a group who's trying to really contribute in a very meaningful way.
And I think if it were me and I was looking to establish a 501c3, I think the first thing I would do would be to research the process of doing that. So I think, I'm sure that's probably happened.
Yep.
So knowing that it is a lengthy process, I think we have an alternative to try to accelerate the schedule. So I think that's something that we can work with the Fur Friends on. And I'm sure once we're moving forward and we have a location selected, when we get closer to where the Fur Friends are going to get ready to fundraise, I think all these dialogues can happen to say, listen, we're at this point, this is what we're gonna do, and we can meet again. I mean, we'd be happy to come back again and meet with the committee to say, you had a major hurdle with the selection in public meeting, and what are the next major hurdles? Because there's a lot of information presented here. So I don't think it's something that we would expect you to say, we know everything there is to know now, we don't have any more questions. We recognize you probably still have more questions as we move along. We've done these before, so for us, what we might be thinking is kind of common, or we've done this before, and you may say the same thing with the relocation of the skateboard park. Well, that was a major stumbling block for you as a committee, and I understand why. So, and those are things that's good to get out there. So.
But I think you just precisely summed up my point, which was you have the expertise. So I think it would be wonderful to collectively share the expertise we have.
And we're happy to meet with you. We met a few weeks ago with the
Through the chair,
subcommittee.
not us, but the Fur Friends.
Yeah, I think they would. I think town administration would.
Yeah, we would be.
Yeah. And through the chair, just to clarify the 6-month kind of window to form a 501c3, that varies. The part that takes the longest point is you're dealing with the IRS. So it can take up to 6 months because they like to give, worst case scenario, how long is this going to take? Again, Natick, their FIDO group, they're 501c3. They got their nonprofit status in 3 weeks.
Okay.
So a lot of the factors depend on the person that's filling out all of the paperwork, are they familiar with it? For the average person, it might be difficult to go through that process. It might take the full 6 months.
Find the funds for it. It's also going to be costly.
Yeah,
right?
but if, there are different ways to kind of speed up that process. 6 months isn't set in stone. It can happen much quicker than that. But that's just kind of a worst case scenario. Like Julie, that's what her timeline was. It was aggressive, but also factoring in some things. So just kind of clarifying that.
It was mentioned before that we have the possibility of having a meeting on the 27th at 7. I move that we officially schedule that tonight and make it official that it's going to happen tonight. Yes, we still have work to do, but we have 3 weeks to do that work. We can get that letter out next week, and we have 2 more weeks after that to prepare.
Yeah, as long as I get the letter by next Wednesday latest, it can be out.
So I move that we make it official tonight.
Been moved that we set, we didn't do this before, is that right?
Pardon
This
me?
is it. We didn't vote.
It was suggested. All we did was
Suggested.
just look for open
Okay.
dates.
It's now been moved that we have the meeting on
Like I said,
April
we've got
27th.
a week to prepare, further work on this letter and the flyer, and then we've got 2 weeks after that to make sure that we're really ready. And I think we can do that in 3 weeks.
Okay, so I'm not saying that we can or we can't do the 27th. I just think we all should be aligned on what the high-level things that we're all agreeing to, so that we feel comfortable that that 27th is attainable.
Could you provide that information?
Like, what are you asking for?
Well, I mean, to me, there's an outreach plan that needs to happen, right? So there's communication, so I'm just throwing it out there. If we post to the Facebook sites, if we're sending emails out, if we're going to Auburn's site, if we're gonna put flyers up, I mean, there's a lot of things that we've talked about in terms of activities within executing the community reach. I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, it seems like we may be focused more on the flyers to the abutters, which obviously is an important piece, and you need to allow for the timing for the creation and the distribution of that, but there's all these other things going on, and just want to make sure everybody's cool with being able to do that.
I am.
Through the chair, the only thing that is time sensitive, why I brought up the 13th, is because even though it's not a hearing, the town suggests / requires 2 weeks notice. So that's the only sensitive one you have to be, but you can do whatever you want.
Because the only thing I would recommend is
why I said
as a lesson learned from the first go-around is we should over-communicate, if anything. That should be the biggest lesson learned, is over-communicating.
And we've already spoken in previous meetings about our plans for posting on Facebook and the Auburn site and at pet stores and vets offices and things like that. So
Is the PowerPoint that you were developing done?
not yet. But I worked on, I took the one that Jim had and I tweaked it a little bit and I'm gonna continue to do so. But
Jim, you've been tweaked several times.
I
I've
asked
got
him and
good
I too.
tweaks.
I asked his permission. I didn't know
I didn't
his
even
name
ask
was on
his
it,
permission, I just
so-
took
Is that a
it.
tweakable?
I'm not emotionally attached to anything.
All right.
I have,
So, yeah, I move that we officially make it the 27th at 7 in that room.
oh, is there a second?
Is there a
Did you just- Did I hear a second from Nicole? No?
No, she
Oh,
said,
it's all right, let's
she
kick
said
it around.
she was
So
undecided.
here's the thing,
That's
is
all right, we'll kick it around, we've got a motion on the
this
floor.
meeting
we'll
is,
discuss it.
what's blocking us from moving forward. If we wanted, the sooner we can get this done and get feedback from the town and get comments from the people who agree and the people who disagree, the sooner we will be able to adjust our presentation for the selectmen, and the sooner we'll be able to get on their agenda to propose to them.
Through the chair, I don't disagree that we need to have it. I'm worried about having enough time to do it right and making sure that because when I feel like this is like, this is the one shot that we have.
Sure.
And I don't know that I have time
What do
in the
you
next
feel is
2
missing?
weeks.
Right.
Logistics.
Yeah,
Logistics,
it's
yeah.
logistics. It's being able to
Of?
meet again and approve the presentation PowerPoint to formally approve the flyer that we're sending out, which still isn't 100%
We
finished.
potentially have 3 weeks between now and then to do that.
But respectfully,
But
through
if
the
we-
chair, we have all been under significant deadlines to achieve things that have been for nothing. And when I look at the next 3 weeks of, and I'm speaking for myself, I cannot invest to meeting that deadline. And I don't want to invest in something that cannot be successful from my individual point of view.
If this helps, I can try to find other times. I reached out to the clerk's office for you guys about the 27th was just the first one she threw out around that time. It's just really hard to get these rooms, but if you're open
Yes.
to the high school, having it there, I can reach out to the high school.
I think
That's fine, I think the
I don't
room
think
was
it
just
gets
somewhere
that
where
many.
where it can be.
Yeah,
filmed.
so
it's gonna
if
be-
videos
It's
and
not
stuff
gonna
like
be-
that.
it's the
So
most
if you
exciting
want,
thing in Auburn going on right now.
yeah.
15 people.
So if you want, if everyone doesn't feel comfortable, I can go back, look,
Thank you, Sean.
and do that if you'd like. Just clarification, is 7 o'clock typically?
Well, I think it would be typical for that kind of
For that
meeting,
kind of
meeting.
not for our meeting. Listen, I'll speak from the chair here.
Absolutely. You have the most experience of all of us
Go ahead.
together.
That's very kind of you to
But
say.
it's
You're not
fact.
the old man here, but that's true that
It
that I
is
am.
fact, Ron.
Making a presentation, as I envision a presentation being made at this meeting, isn't the greatest thing in the world, isn't the biggest thing in the world. If you've taught class for 45 minutes, you've been under more pressure than you would be making this presentation. So that doesn't scare me. I'd always thought right along that, I'd rewrite Jim's things because he had some good things in there and make it smoother, and that I would make it. And that it would be no big sweat. And at the end, you'd say, have you got any questions? Oh, yeah, there are half dozen questions. And if the questions are too hard to answer on the spot, you say, well, we will try and come up with the answer to that question. If you want to come back to our next meeting, we would try and answer.
I mean, we're never
Or maybe
gonna,
we'll answer it on TV. We're gonna, right after that, or maybe even then, even before, have tried to establish a meeting with the selectmen. I'm not gonna look at it pessimistically and say we can't go and recommend this site to the selectmen, because we might get the Upland Street crowd or some of the Oxford Street crowd or the Polly Way crowd
Hey.
up there yelling at us saying this
We have
is
some
not what
dollars
we
on
want.
the way, I think. Enough.
So I think we should get those 2 meetings. And maybe the 27th is a little optimistic. Maybe you want to push the whole thing off another week or 2. That's fine, but I don't want to push it off another month.
I would agree.
I agree.
I agree.
So,
And is there a gain, I guess, in pushing it off 2 weeks or 1 week?
personally, I don't see one. I think what we need to do, we need to get this letter finalized, which we haven't even looked at yet.
No, we're not even there.
But we have, and to get that flyer, but did you finish it? You said you had a couple edits to do. Okay.
Almost.
Maybe that's what we should do, is look at those and we keep that motion out there in space until we've looked at those things, and then we can decide whether we
Right.
want to
I mean,
support that
yeah.
motion. It needs a second still. We'll have to decide whether we want to support it or whether we want to make a different
So,
motion.
personally, like, it's always gonna be scary.
Yeah,
Never gonna have all the answers.
yeah.
To be clear, I don't speak from a place of fear at all. I'm used to speaking before
Sure
significant
you are.
audiences, and teach is a large part of my career.
Yeah.
Having said that, I don't stand up before an audience unless I am fully prepared. And I just don't feel, again, based on my personal world, my little bubble, that I can perform to the level that is required at the one shot we have to not screw this up.
Kidding my man.
Okay. And again, we have 3 weeks between right
Yeah,
now
but
and
see,
then, so.
but what I
But
keep hearing, what I
respectfully.
keep hearing here is like there's two different perspectives, right? There's you that you're trying to go right up the middle with the ball, and I get it. I mean, I've done that too myself many times, right? But we're also making a lot of generalizations. Well, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. Meanwhile, I'm hearing some other folks that, you know, may have to do pieces of this, not kind of feeling good about it. And we're still talking generalization, so it's almost like, to me, it's like, let's get a little bit more specific.
Yep.
This is what we need to do. Who's gonna do it? And is it gonna be done by this date? And then take a look at the calendar and take a look at when our next meetings are scheduled. Because right now, if we're talking about, could you bring up your calendar view again, if you would? So right now, you know, based on our current schedule, you know, we haven't agreed to, you know, meeting again for, you know, every week like we have been. Our next meeting is the 19th. So to me, we would have to have, you know, presentation done. You want to have your marketing flyer done. All of that stuff would need to be agreed to through the committee, which hasn't been done. I mean, the good news is there's work been done. The bad news is it hasn't been fully vetted and agreed to by everybody, you know, on the committee, so it's still kind of an open item. So you then have to figure out, well, when is that going to get done?
And the reality is, with respect, Sarah, we've met all of the deadlines that other individuals have had on this committee, even when certain members of this committee have invested significant portions of time to meet those deadlines. And I personally don't have the time to invest to meet that deadline. Not that I can't, but I need more time.
Through the chair, I'm super sorry. I have to excuse myself, but I know you guys still haven't decided, but if you guys feel like you want to push it a week or
Shane,
two.
would you look at just the
Yeah.
dates that are available?
Yeah, feel
And
free.
is it up to the committee to meet on a Wednesday, or
Yeah, do you have
you'd
any
like to go
days?
back to your normal Wednesdays? Would you like
Wednesdays.
to
Would you like it
prefer
on a
Thursday?
Every other
Thursdays
Wednesday would be
or
just
Whatever
nice.
is available.
Instead of every Wednesday.
Okay, so whatever day kind of works with anyone, if for
Yeah.
public hearing wise, at 7?
At 7, yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, so if that's the decision, if someone could follow up with me tomorrow, whether you decided for the 27th or not, I can update the
Okay.
clerk's office, because they've put a tentative hold for that date. If
Okay.
not, I can just work for whatever one's. Yeah,
Thank
of
you
course,
so
no
much.
problem.
Thank you so much,
Yeah, no
Thank you.
problem.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming to
Alright.
the meeting.
Thank you, very good.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
A lot of progress tonight, so,
Thank
Yeah.
you.
thank you.
Yeah, it was, thank you.
Okay.
All right, so let's go through this letter then.
Okay, so, through the chair.
I assume that would be the letter N.
I emailed Amy. She was kind enough to give me the copy that was sent to Ward Street and Upland Street residents, and so I kind of just took it and tailored it to us. So Town of Auburn, Massachusetts is how it started off at the top, so it wasn't even official letterhead. It really just said, and they listed dog park. Board of Selectmen, committee meters were listed as well as town administration. Since it would just be us doing the presentation, I just listed us.
Do you want the letterhead for the town?
It wasn't even on there,
Okay.
but if you think it would be pretty,
Well,
then I
I-
don't mind adding it.
At this juncture, I don't care about pretty, but I do have the letterhead.
Okay.
Is your name spelled wrong?
With an E in the end.
Is everyone else's name spelled right?
Yes, check spelling, sorry.
Everyone else's name, yes,
Okay.
good, okay. I said you spelled your own name, right?
Clerk.
Me? Yes, I spelled my name right. The notice of public hearing is how they listed it. I didn't know if this would be
Can
What
a
did he
public
say?
meeting
Just-
or
Can
a
we
public
call this-
information.
can we call this-
Until this
Me?
evening. I hope you know.
Can we call this a forum?
Isn't that what
So
it
that was
says?
my question is,
Public hearing.
how do I title this?
It's not a hearing.
It's not a
No.
hearing, right.
No,
so I
it's a
didn't-
public meeting.
Can we call
Public
it
meeting,
forum?
okay. I
Forum
wasn't
sounds
sure.
better. Can you say forum?
No,
No.
because that would imply that we would
Because
make
we
long
still are
answers.
meeting.
Long answers, right?
We're still meeting.
We want to be able to say.
Not a forum, it's not a
We don't know.
discussion.
Right.
It's a one item.
I'm
Whatever.
not
Yeah.
texting, I'm getting you that document. You're
Why don't
good.
we just call a public information meeting dog park? So dog park public information meeting.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine too.
I mean, that's the purpose of what we're trying to do, is provide information. I mean, a hearing feels like, when you say the
Well,
word
we
hearing,
should
it's
say
like
hearing.
a
Let's
decision,
say hearing.
decisions
Took
have been
meeting,
made.
we took hearing out.
Alright. Okay, so in an effort to keep the abutters and residents informed about and so that's all of how they started theirs. I switched it to, about the recommendation of Lemansky Park, Auburn, Massachusetts, as a potential dog park location. The dog park committee will hold a public meeting at 7 p.m. on April 27th, obviously, which may change, may remain, not sure yet, in the select board meeting room, which is how it was written on the
That's
letter. Is that correct? Okay. Second floor in Auburn Town Hall, and obviously that's amenable if there are changes. Questions?
We need to be more specific on the Lemansky Park location, so we don't believe we're tearing down the track.
Okay, so at, or recommendation of,
Be careful
I
about
would, yeah, I'd
being too
be,
specific. I think
I would
this-
just leave it the way it is,
Yeah.
and I think that we can be specific when we're at the meeting.
I agree.
okay. We could always say like of a portion of Lemansky Park?
Yeah, that.
Would that be
might
better?
Yeah,
Elise, would that
would that be all right?
be okay?
Yeah,
A
it'd be
portion?
lovely, and
Okay.
I just sent you the letterhead.
Okay, thank you.
You're very
Thank you.
welcome.
Committee members will discuss the proposed implementation, funding, analysis, and maintenance of the proposed dog park.
No.
All of that was written on that letter, and I didn't know what to take out, so
Get
I
rid
just
of
left it.
funding.
Okay, yeah, get rid of funding.
And I
I don't know
suppose
what
if
else
you
to
want to
write.
say there'll be cleanup
Okay.
without
Maintenance?
assigning it to anyone, maintenance
Right.
would be all
Be
right.
Right, maintenance,
Yeah.
yeah.
The proposed, do you
I
want
know.
to say implementation?
That's what they had on theirs, and I was like, I don't know if, implementation of the dog park, of the proposed dog park.
Proposed, we don't have a design.
Construction, I think.
Right.
We don't have a design, we don't have construction. The potential,
We'll
Location,
discuss the proposed site.
site.
you're
Site,
exactly
yes,
right,
site,
Matthew.
because that's
Site
what we
for a dog
discussed.
park.
And we're not discussing how it's going to be laid out.
Right,
That's
we're not
not.
discussing anything.
Proposed site,
Right.
that looks nice.
We will discuss,
Right.
always be appropriate. Okay,
Don't be appropriate.
Provide, should we just say we'll discuss the proposed site by providing information on? Or about, by providing information about the park? Period?
About the dog park, yeah.
we will discuss the possibility of construction of a dog park? Or is that too wordy?
Proposed site.
No,
Are you
it's not
okay
too
with
wordy
it?
depending on how much we get after that.
Possibility
It's not.
of construction.
The way that the formatting is like moving the words. Is
I
I
know,
know,
sorry.
it's like making my head just,
Close your eyes.
provided.
I will go to meditation if I'm
We'll
gonna close
discuss the
my
proposed
eyes.
site by providing,
No, that's not right.
no, by discussing, no.
No.
By, we already just said discuss.
The
We will discuss the
The
possibility
right, of
of
construction
of
of a
a dog
dog
construction
park.
of a dog park.
There you go. That's easy.
I don't mean to like oversimplify, but that's kind of where
That's,
I'm at.
that's
Yeah,
the-
no,
but
I think
that-
you're
That's
right.
kind of what you want to
Yeah,
do.
that's
I think
kinda-
you're
yeah.
right.
That's good.
Residents will have the opportunity to provide feedback, absolutely, and the committee will
Um,
remain silent.
Wait a minute.
Do you want that, or do you want
I
to
don't.
ask questions?
To ask questions.
Or,
To provide no, feedback is, I think,
Yeah.
still okay.
I
We
like
want to hear
feedback.
their
Yeah.
concerns.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to, I mean,
well, I don't want to hear their concerns, but I do want to hear their concerns.
we want to hear their concerns
Yes.
so we can, when we meet with the Board of Selectmen, we can say, these are the concerns, but these are the realities.
Yeah.
And
Right.
prepare them to combat those concerns or be,
because they're going to have their own
informed.
public meeting too. So
right. So they will be prepared with those concerns in advance, which is the whole point. So we do want to hear their concerns, their
Right.
feedback. And they'll have the opportunity to ask questions. I don't know if we need to add that as well, is
I
feedback
think that counts as feedback.
count?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. And then it also, at the end of their letter, said, please contact the town manager's office with any questions regarding, and you can switch that to the public meeting, or to submit any written comments. So that,
That's easy.
I know I remember for the Board of Selectmen meeting that people wrote in if they weren't able to attend, but they had wanted to weigh in on the
Yeah, yeah.
situation,
That's
and then
fair.
they were read aloud. So I believe that's something that I would hope that town administration, we can contact them and ask them if they'd be willing to forward any of those to you, and you can read them at the meeting, Mr. Chair, if you're okay with that. So that's all, it was very brief, very,
That's fair.
you know,
Yeah.
and then I would hope to also include the flyer, perhaps, in
Yeah.
that letter,
Yep.
and when mailing out.
Okay.
So that was my thoughts.
How are you feeling about the current state of the flyer?
I feel very good about it. I honestly just did not have time to finish it this week. I've been,
Absolutely.
I've been back to, even today I've been home for about 5 minutes.
And that's
So,
the reality. We've been under such a deadline.
Yeah.
And believe me, I want to get the park built as soon as you
Oh,
guys
yeah.
do.
Yep.
Well,
But
again,
I want to
like I
do it.
said, we went from every other week
Yes,
to
agreed.
every single week to, oh my God, let's get this
It's-
done, to, and it's like,
Right.
it's
And I
okay.
don't mean to speak out of turn, but you developed the pamphlet
Yeah.
Yeah.
essentially
Yep.
independently.
And it's almost done, and I am proud of it, and I am happy with it. I'm pretty sure you guys we're almost there. I had time to do the letter because I felt that was more important to get done, just in case we did vote to send it out next week. So I wanted to get that in first, knowing that you knew 99% of the flyer that was already done. So I made very few edits to the flyer, but I can upload that at some point this week so you guys can see my final version, quote unquote, and then we can vote on that the next time we meet.
Right.
So I'm confident I could potentially finish that by our next meeting.
I thought you were gonna say I wanted to be Ernie.
Well, Ernie and Danny. I'm sorry, I'm just having a moment.
So, all right,
We're negotiating.
we need some,
So I think that's great.
So,
Yeah.
like the letter.
I motion to approve that letter.
Seconded.
Can I just see, where did it go?
I closed it.
Should we
More
sorry,
paying attention.
one more time?
Just, I was talking about Annie, I'm sorry, the world revolves around Annie.
At 8 o'clock, my world revolves around going home.
Sarah,
Okay, it's 8 o'clock at night, my world is revolving about going home
Thank you again for opening that.
for 2 hours of deliberation, thank you.
So I second your motion to approve the
Thank
letter.
you.
Any discussion? By God, I'm doing your
Do
job.
you got any input, Jim, or you
No,
you
good.
good? Okay, you wanna go home too?
No, this is low hanging
Okay.
fruit.
It's just, it is, this is
Yeah.
an easy
We don't
peasy
need
one.
analysis paralysis on this.
no,
So the only thing we have left is the.
Wait, we
the-
gotta
vote.
we gotta
need a
vote
vote.
on the letter.
Can I vote on it?
Yeah.
Some kind of motion, please.
I motion that we vote on the letter.
We already have.
All right,
you want a
Second.
motion to approve it?
I want a motion to
Yeah.
approve it, yes, please.
Okay, been moved and seconded that we approve
Yes,
the
please.
letter.
I should
All
have brought
those
my
in favor?
smart food,
Aye.
smart food.
Opposed?
popcorn.
Pending date updates as needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can update it.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, we can't, because we won't have much time to
Because you
update
would
it.
need it
It'll
by
be
next
sent out.
Wednesday. If we're doing the 27th.
Right.
So we would need the flyer plus this by the 27th?
No, by
No, you
next
would-
week, by
you need it by next-
By
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
I
next
mean,
week.
not
Oh, sorry, yeah, by next week.
Do not.
the flyer is so close to done that I'm confident I can get it
Sure.
done for
Hey,
like next week.
fine.
But
But
everything
we're
else.
not meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
we're not meeting,
you had
so,
said
yeah.
last time that really the flyer didn't need much other than the date.
Yeah.
I honestly, I think it's fine the way it is.
Yeah.
If you want to make changes, I trust you.
The flyer is fine the way it is. We
like-
just needed to add the date. If
Yeah.
you remember when we
I think we already
we had
approved it.
already approved it and we were just pending the
Edits
date,
and the date.
Yeah.
edits and the date, but we didn't have any edits.
Right.
We made
I
all
think
of those
there were
edits.
like typos.
I think that.
Well,
the-
there
might
were
have been
some
it.
suggestions, rightfully so,
Okay.
with the skate park and
Okay.
with
Yeah.
costs and writing disease stuff and whatnot. And so there were those suggestions.
There were
which I
some
did-
additions.
I did add
Okay.
certain things, so I'd like to
All right.
finalize that before
Okay.
our next meeting. And I can do that, definitely in 2 weeks I can do that. Because
Okay.
it won't take me long to finalize the flyer.
So I just want to play back what I heard, and I get what you're saying. So I guess what I'm hearing is, on today is April 5th, so on April 19th is when we would know that this
flyer is done, which means we're not doing a public
No.
meeting on the 27th.
It would be in May
It would be the
sometime.
next.
Okay, just want, that's the way I was interpreting it, which is fine. I mean, you can only do what you can do.
Sometime in May. And we won't know when until we can get further dates from the clerk.
Right. I think, to add, I think it's also important for us to see the presentation and go through that and agree on that before we,
But I mean, we can do that after the letters go out.
see, I don't know, because
I
what
don't
if we have
What if we come up with
suggestions?
something, right?
If there's, you know what I mean, if
But
anything needs to
we have
change.
2 weeks between when the letters go
But
out
we meet
and
once. So
Right.
if we're, you know,
And we can't do meaningful work outside,
Right.
remember?
Yep.
Right.
So that's the problem. The problem is if we're like, well, we need to change this or not. Not to say that you're going to make any mistakes or have anything missing, but you know, and the flyer the flyer was pretty good,
Yeah.
and I've revised it 3 times. So in that history, I would just say it's just smarter for us to look at it together, because if we do have edits, we have to wait till our next meeting to then vote it and say X, Y,
Right.
and Z, and then knowing. And I agree with Elise, and I feel I want this to happen, and I know if they're waiting on us, but I want it to happen right, and I want it to be perfect, and I know there's gonna be opposition no matter what, but I truly believe we have one shot at this and
Operation.
making it work, and I want to be fully prepared, so, you know.
All right, so through the chair, I'd like to add something to what Nicole said, right? So we have 2 pieces of collateral, right, which require edits, right? 1.1 is out on the Google Drive, and that's my latest, right? What I'm suggesting is whatever you want to call your latest version, you post to the Google Drive as well.
Yep.
Everyone between now and the next time we meet, go through it, maybe print it out, write your edits on what you want to print out, type of a thing, right? So
Sure.
that we're doing, or suggested edits, whatever tweaks, whatever you want to call it. And then the goal for the next meeting is we're going to go
Get it
through
done.
both those documents. We're going to edit on the fly so that at that point
We're
they're done. But one thing I would call out is that my presentation, as it stands right now, does not have a lot of data sources.
And it
right?
shouldn't. It shouldn't.
Well,
It should not have a lot of data sources. It should not be longer than 20 minutes to present. How long do you keep kids' attention in
Yeah,
Spanish
you won't
class?
keep people
I'm-
longer.
You won't keep them on it.
Well,
You won't keep,
I'll-
and I don't care how much data, it is not gonna be useful to someone who's not paying attention.
Through the chair, to clarify, are there 2 presentations we're talking
No,
about?
we're
No.
talking
Okay, so
about
we're talking about
No,
one.
one
Okay.
I want to
presentation.
clarify what I mean about data too. I'm not suggesting we're going to have 45, pages of stuff. What I'm saying is, we make a statement, we put a little, blurb under it. We got this information from XYZ.
So that we cite
Right,
the sources.
because
we don't
Citing
here's
resources,
reality with respect to the presentation that was done that blew up in everyone's face. There was not an ounce of supporting data on both sides of the fence that provided any type of credibility to any of
But
the points
that's
that were
not why
made.
it blew up.
I would
It
say.
is blown up before the meeting, and no matter what you gave them at the meeting, the results were gonna be the same. People came with their minds made up, knowing how they were gonna vote, knowing what they were gonna say, and no amount of additional data in the presentation would have changed their mind there.
Through the chair, the edits that you had made, Mr. Proudy, on the
Yep.
presentation, are they in the shared drive right now?
I don't know.
Okay,
You-
I
you
don't
have-
know, I believe I put them there.
Okay, I thought
Remember when
you
you said to
had.
me, why are there 9?
Mhm.
We had talked about this because I probably did it wrong.
No, it wasn't. It showed that Ron was the owner.
Okay, but it was his document.
Ron's not
But-
the owner, Ron is the editor here.
Anyway,
Ron
Then,
is the loudmouth that will say it.
All right, so let me go back and look and make sure your edits are in the drive.
so I
Okay?
took,
It was like grammar and.
Yeah,
and
Just
phrasing.
so-
print it out.
I took the most recent one that I found in the drive.
There are
I
8
will be
pages.
sure what is there.
I
There are
took,
8 pages, and the one that really needs some work is the overview, because it was so big, we couldn't get the whole map on there. And I will go, I guess,
I've
to
said
Bill
it.
and ask him,
Thing right
yeah,
now.
Oh, you have
but
it.
that's tough to get that.
I've
on
already,
this-
I
Have you?
took the border off the left side and I
Okay.
blew up the picture. So you
Okay.
get, the 1.1, I would say this,
That's,
I authored the document, right? 1.1, I'm telling you, is the latest updates that
Okay.
I've made.
Okay.
So
Okay.
what I would suggest to everyone is, I know some of you made some edits and you posted it to the site, that's fine. Take whatever edits you want to make now and in the future, just bring them to the next meeting so that you have them in front of you and we can discuss
So
them
you want
as we
hard
go.
copy, not
So we're not
I
file?
was
going through this
suggesting,
right now,
you
right?
know,
Because we're not
write
going
your
through
own
this
notes,
right
whatever
now.
you feel comfortable with.
So,
If we could just have a brief conversation about the data, so we're on the same page. I'm hearing Mr. Proudy say, no data, because we don't want to overwhelm folks.
no
I'm hearing-
index type. data,
Correct.
Right.
I'm hearing Jim say, data is an essential part to a presentation.
Cite your sources.
Cite your
Um,
sources.
That's
Mr.
what I'm
Proudy,
saying.
How would you feel about citing the sources, but not stating them?
Just having them
Or
there.
I'm just
lecturing?
glancing through it to see what sources.
So like say in
There are no
the-
sources
There aren't
Yeah.
any there. There
No, I
aren't
know,
any
I'm
right
just
now.
saying what sources
But like
would
for
we need
example,
to
the
dedicate?
AKC, you know, the American
Discuss
Kennel
them in
Club
2 weeks.
states
Right.
dog parks reduce barking.
I have
People
a bunch
made-
of sources, or
Like
not a
home
bunch.
values, some people made, you know, to me, unfounded comments with respect to home valuations going down
Right.
with no
Background.
supporting or
source.
qualification of
So
that
if this is
statement.
going to be something that's going to be public, if this presentation is going to be something that's public, you want to have your sources cited, because when people look at it, they're going to go, oh, where did that come from?
Yeah, I'm not saying we have to talk
And
about,
they'll-
you know,
you
talk
know what
about
I'm
every
saying?
source that's there, but
No,
you know,
but
people
I
at that
know
point should
that.
go off and have a nice
It
time.
doesn't mean that the source needs to be stated while we're doing the presentation, it
That's fine,
just
I agree
needs
with you
to be
100%.
underneath
Or
the statement, like, home values don't go down. This is where we got this.
can we meet in the middle and
For
do one of
instance.
those for more information?
What do you mean?
You know what I
It's
mean.
a citing your source.
You don't know what I mean.
Through the,
For more information,
through the chair,
click on the link.
on the
I can do
flyer,
that too. I mean, however you state it,
Explain
doesn't
that.
matter.
Mr. Proudy,
I-
would you be okay if there was one thing at the end that said, for more information, click? And they clicked,
I think you
and
need
then
to,
all that was dumped there?
I think you need to state your source. I really feel that that's important. I agree with Jim.
For more information, put it in your question that you're gonna send in, because that's the way it'll come. They're
Did you
not-
say that again?
Well, I would say
If
this.
you have
Hold
a
on, Jim, hold on a
question
second.
regarding the authenticity of what was said, then put it in the question.
But have them ask a question, Ms. Proudy?
No, didn't we say we were gonna have a line that said, if you have further questions, when we talked about the meeting, if you have further questions, submit them to the town manager?
that's in the
And then
letter.
you said
That's
we
in
can
the
so we're
forward
talking
them
about
to
the,
me.
the PowerPoint.
We're not talking about
What's
the
it
letter,
called?
we're talking
We do
about the
a
PowerPoint.
hyperlink that leads us to.
But then we need a website.
Yeah.
No, see, they're not gonna go to the
Right.
website.
No, so we also have this appendix page, which is empty, that we could put a list of sources in there too, and then just flash it up on the screen while we're talking about other things.
Where
Which
was
is honestly what my
that,
science teachers did in school years
All right,
ago.
okay, my opinion through the chair is that I think sources are important, and for that reason, with the minimal, real estate property that's on that flyer, I included sources, because I think it is important.
Yeah.
I do not think it needs to take more than 30 seconds to say, here are a bunch of sources, this PowerPoint is on the town website, if you want to click on any of those links, you're more than welcome to go there.
Yeah.
But I do think, because one of the things that I've kind of prepared myself to ask people in this meeting to answer a question with a question is where their information comes from. And so I feel if we're going to ask them that,
Then
we need to provide where our information
I
comes
agree.
from.
To me, it's bringing a high level of maturity to the presentation that was presented by the town with respect to the information they provided. There was no.
You realize that someone's just gonna come back with an anecdote.
It's
Understood,
perfectly fine.
understood.
Yeah.
Perfectly fine, but at least
Absolutely.
I understand. Trust me, I understand that. Yeah. But coming with your facts and information and expecting them to not just have an opinion. And you were so right when you said that when we first went through the flyer, and you're like, I'm seeing a lot of opinion here. Where's the source? And you're absolutely right, because it needs to be more informational. And like I said earlier, I feel that even in just being informational, it is promotional because we have done the research.
Right.
And not that it's without, some disadvantages, but the majority of research has told us that it's actually going to be a benefit.
So Jim, when you went through this and you put the stuff together and you came up with the 8 or 9 slides, what would you estimate the delivery time to be?
I have no idea.
Give me a rough estimate.
No idea. I don't even remember what I wrote.
honestly. I mean, I would say, I would.
How many minutes per slide would you anticipate?
He doesn't remember what he wrote.
No,
That was a long time ago.
I would
I
say
can't see, I don't know.
probably 2 per
2
slide.
minutes?
Yeah, and there are 8 pages of it.
I would say we
That
can.
takes us under the 20 minutes.
Yeah, I would say this, we can dry run it at the next meeting.
Sure.
So I'm just throwing, again, this is a discussion point, something to consider as you're editing and reviewing these documents online. You know, at the end of the day, we still gotta come back and we gotta review the documents, agree to them, get to the final state so that we can then go use them.
Alright, so you want us to use version 1.1?
1.1.
Can we get rid of the other versions?
Yeah, like we need to
Yeah.
only have one version.
Okay. Oh, the other
I'm
thing.
gonna keep mine though, because I have edits in there, but I will get rid of it when I edit 1.1.
Okay, thank you.
That was done other than
Thank you.
the new slide.
And also this is Ron's.
I mean, I can show you, if you wanna click on 1.1 and just go to the map slide, I'll show you what I did.
That one, I think is what you want to keep up on the thing all the time.
No,
Done.
yeah, no, that's not the right one.
So I will make sure that
Sorry.
version is in the drive. Promise.
Just don't
Because
delete
Ron
words.
had done some of the word smithing. Sound like you tonight. What's going on?
I mean, wordsmith away, I mean, I've got no
And-
problems with that.
Oh, that's really nice. I like that one.
That's lovely.
That's much better.
Yeah, I like that one.
And
And honestly, I went in
And it's
and
much
made one
clearer, yeah.
that
That's
also
great.
had edited some of the text because there were a lot of typos.
And that
Um,
slide should be up there most of the time.
Yeah,
yes, the image.
No
That
comment.
is the image that they want.
this I did fix this in my version as well
Okay, they won't
because that's ugly.
really care what else I say, but they'll want to
This
see
is the
that,
one. Oh,
and
this is
they'll
one.
want to
Oh, there's two
be
slides.
reassured that
That
we
was the
didn't
show
steal
before and after
basketball
we'd
courts,
probably
and we
get
didn't
rid of
steal
that.
Little League field,
I like that it
and we
includes
didn't
a new
steal
skate park
tennis
location,
courts or
too.
the playground.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's good.
Alright.
And also, if
Do
I
we-
could just add, this is random, but speaking of the new skate park, I just want to add that I think it's wonderful that Julie spoke with that person, and we
Yeah.
know
Yes.
with her telling us that they are in support of moving the location.
Yep.
I think that's also huge, and that may be something to add to our presentation. Just going to put that out there.
And while I need to kind of de-escalate myself about everything that has occurred and that will occur prior to the next meeting,
A few drinks, you'll do it just fine.
you can't or would.
I'll do it for you
The
then.
beauty of blood thinners, I can't. That said, I really feel like that is a valid source of information. But wouldn't, the past is the past. I was going to say, wouldn't it be nice if we had had that? Because we could have completed the task. But coming from Julie, I think, as you just said, carries an excellent value in her role. And that is very much appreciated, that she was kind enough to reach out to that individual.
What else do we need to do?
So I would make a motion, if we're good for the next agenda, let's do that, and let's,
So-
Do we have
Okay.
to approve these minutes? Did we ever?
Oh yeah, we
No, we
did.
haven't done that yet.
I know I transposed you guys in one place.
Well, I approve of it anyway.
Awesome. So I will fix the mistake. There's one place where I called
you're being
Nicole
recorded.
Sarah.
I like the comment on how I,
Ms. Vecchio suggested the town ought to consider installing a water fountain. I believe that
That
was
was
Ms.
me.
Libby.
yeah.
So that is my error. And I will
Curl your
fix
hair and
it.
you straighten your hair.
Oh, it's way too much work.
Trust me, mine is curly like yours.
Motion to approve.
I know.
Date of those minutes.
3/22/2017.
22?
Okay, before you put that motion out there, don't we have a motion still unvoted that
Oh, yeah.
talked about when we're gonna do this?
Yes, we
We're
had,
not doing it the 27th.
we had
I'm
yours
just
and
gonna
we
say
didn't
that
get a
right now.
second.
There are enough people here that are not comfortable
Okay,
with
you
doing
want
it
another
the
week, or-
27th.
Well, we
Am I
can't
correct?
simply for the fact that
We
we
don't
haven't done the
have enough
edits and we're
time.
not meeting again until the
Okay.
19th.
If we're not meeting next
Okay.
week, then we don't
Yeah.
have enough time.
Okay, so we're meeting then the
Why
19th.
aren't we meeting next week? Because nobody wants to.
Because you're meditating.
No, I'd like to at least want to get one.
So our next meeting is scheduled for 4/19/2017.
I think we can finalize that.
6
You want to
p.m.
find out, we want to be able to
And
finalize
our
that.
tasks will be
So we're saying no to
finalized.
the motion.
Our task
We're
will be
saying
to
no to the
finalize the
motion.
documents.
Yes.
Right.
And to set a date for the public
Yes, and Mr.
meeting.
Crowdy's gonna speak with the town
Right.
clerk
Thank
and
you. And I
find
will
out what
speak.
dates are available.
Just-
Right.
Yeah.
You want me to do that? You want me to get a hold of Shannon tomorrow?
I thought Mr.
What do you
Crowdy-
Or were you gonna do that? Get a hold of
Does he-
Shannon? She just said somebody,
Yeah.
so I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure somebody had a tag on that.
Okay. And if we
And if
edit,
you've got a tag on it, I'm good.
if we edit the PowerPoint, we edit 1.1, correct?
1.1, yep.
That is correct.
I vote we print.
Or
it.
if you don't feel comfortable, you know.
Bring it however you captured
I was
your
gonna
edits.
say, if you don't feel
Doesn't
comfortable
matter to
doing the
me.
edits on there, just write them down. print it
That's
out,
the
write
last
it down.
Ink
ride.
is expensive. I'm not printing anything.
I'll print one for you.
Ink is
Well-
so expensive. I can't.
Well, and you're
Just
computer
Okay.
savvy, I'm not that
I'll
computer
print
savvy,
one
so the
for
ink
you.
is worth it to
You can
me.
print at school, right?
No, I don't do that for personal stuff.
But yeah, so if you don't.
Just get expensive in my world, so I don't worry about it.
Ink is so
lucky.
expensive.
Okay, so with regards to the 27th,
So that's not happening on the 27th. Right.
We just said
We
it can't-
agreed that, right?
We can't, it can't happen based on the logistics of, and tasks that need to happen.
yeah.
So
I
now
don't
that
have
we've
minutes.
down that motion, can we do a motion to approve the minutes for the 22nd?
Well, before you
We had to
leave
vote,
that topic,
Oh,
No?
is
Okay.
there a weekday, a day of the week,
Yes.
in the following week that is not okay with a number of you?
Wait, the week after, so this week.
Yep, yep.
So first week of
If you're
May.
looking at first week in May, is there
For
a
the public
day,
meeting.
first, second, third, fourth, fifth, that you are not available?
I think I'm okay.
And I would not
Availability.
include the fifth.
I'm gonna say I'm not available on the 5th.
You know,
Really?
I was
Cinco de
about
Mayo?
to say, I'll be in Thailand.
It's 2 days
Thank
before my
you.
national exam. I'm
Okay.
gonna be like,
No.
I'm
Little
gonna be like that all week anyway.
I think, yeah, we should probably not have it on Cinco de
I'll be in
Mayo.
Thailand.
Yeah, I'm a taco
I'm a
girl,
Spanish
so
teacher.
like,
I have that.
I need to be like celebrating Cinco de
I'm
Mayo.
not,
I may not drink, but I eat lots of Mexican.
oh my God, no. That was sarcasm. But,
Yeah, I just, well,
Explain.
besides the
We
fact
need
that
to
it's a
talk.
Friday.
All right, so should we have it on Star Wars Day, May the 4th?
I don't
Well,
even
we
know.
don't know that that's available.
I
Well,
don't know.
so,
It was-
so
it
we
was
just
a
know,
joke.
we know that
We
the
know that
first, the second, the
sometime-
third, and the fourth are available for all of us. Okay.
Okay, so I have to find
The
out
first
from
fourth
Shannon
First
when
of all,
that's
First of all,
available
the fourth.
to us.
Yes, please.
Because she's looking into dates.
I'm gonna
and we wanna
kidnap
know
you
if
and we're gonna
open.
watch all the Star Wars
Well, and
movies.
Jim is confirming his dates. And Howard?
We're gonna go watch all the Star Wars.
Howard, what do you think?
we're going with 7 o'clock, is that what we're saying?
Yeah,
Howard
it's-
said he would
7 is
be
the
at our
best though,
next
yeah.
meeting.
Yes.
All right.
Poor
I
Howard.
don't care at this point, 7 o'clock, any
Any
Monday to
night.
Thursday.
You'll just
Yep.
bring the children, you'll bring the dog,
Yeah,
it'll be
I
great.
won't
right.
subject them to this,
That sounds like a personal affront.
don't take it that way.
Yeah. No, 7 is good for working parents.
Yeah.
But yeah, not Cinco de Mayo.
No,
Not a Friday,
no.
in general.
All right,
It's
so
not Taco
That's a
Tuesday, it's
Wednesday,
Taco
never mind.
Friday.
Yeah.
the
Oh, no, that's
house-
April, so it is a Friday. The minutes?
Minutes.
So I can
Minutes.
send them to the town clerk, please.
It's been moved
Motion
that the
of-
minutes be,
Seconded.
Yeah.
Sure.
moved and seconded, the minutes be accepted.
She already seconded it. We got it.
Awesome, thank
Were
you.
any corrections or omissions?
I made my own
Additions?
corrections.
Good.
No revisions.
Good.
We got
All in
it.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
It is unanimous vote.
All right. So we are
3:20.
meeting
Wait,
again on
we
the.
have this, what about the other minutes? Are there 2 minutes?
Yes,
There
there
were
are.
two.
Okay.
I thought you lumped them.
Yeah, I was under the impression we lumped them.
Yeah.
I,
You know,
Look
I'm
at that,
so
second
glad
check
you
mark.
guys value my midnight effort last night.
Like, who
All
was
right.
reading it?
I read it.
Today, I was.
I know, I'm being totally
We
Don't be
cranky right now.
are meeting on the 19th. Yes.
Yes,
At 6. Here. Yes.
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 Okay. Move
Part of our
to
regular scheduled program.
adjourn.
Yeah, same bad time,
Oh,
same
wait a
bad
minute.
channel.
Oh, no.
I just need to clarify. I promise, 30 seconds. So with regards to the town and the Fur Friends, we left it that they're
That
on
is
their own.
their job.
They're fine.
To communicate.
I did suggest them to
They're fine.
communicate. Okay, so noted, thank you.
And I won't see you.
Okay,
My biggest thing got
I was not
done
trying
today,
to
which
hide
was the skate
things.
park. I'm very happy with that information. That makes me feel much better.
Right, so,
Do we
Are we-
still
are we good?
audio?
Yeah, you didn't officially adjourn yet.
Move to
Oh, okay,
adjourn.
good. Move to adjourn?
Moved.
I second.
And second, that we adjourn. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.